Chapter 578. The Imperial Guard captain had already announced the list of the 9 contestants, but Ji Tianxing was not among them. Ji Ku and Yenner's hearts were in their mouths as they looked worried. Ji Ku said worriedly, "This is already the 9th person on the list. Why hasn't Brother Tianxing been announced yet? Could it be that the Imperial Court eliminated Brother Tianxing? It shouldn't be. Brother Tianxing defeated the Demon King and saved the Star Ancient Realm and the Tianqian region. He's the hero of the Tianqian region." Yen was also anxious as she said in a low voice, "Junior Cuckoo, don't worry. There's still the last spot. It's definitely Brother Tianxing's." Kuan Wu shook his head and said solemnly, "You've probably forgotten that the Murong clan's crown prince, Murong Lingfeng, will definitely not let go of the chance to fight for the region leader's position. Murong Lingfeng's strength seems to be stronger than Duanmu Yulong's. Even Duanmu Yulong passed the first round of assessment. Murong Lingfeng must be on the list." When they heard his analysis, Ji Ku and Yen instantly became even more anxious, and their expressions became even more unsightly. Ji Tianxing was also worried. After all, he was not sure how the Imperial Court would treat him. If he was not on the list, he would not even have the chance to fight for the region leader's position. How sad would that be? Finally, the Imperial Guard captain announced the 10th contestant's name loudly. The 10th contestant, Ji Tianxing, is the 56th Crown Prince of the Imperial Residence. He has the strength of Sky Origin Stage 2. When the 3 golden words Ji Tianxing appeared on the Imperial Token stage, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke heaved a sigh of relief. However, the other 9 contestants' introductions were mostly a few hundred words long. The least was 100 or 200 words long. Only Ji Tianxing's introduction was so simple. The people in the square immediately burst into a clamor of discussion. Many of them were even shocked. What's going on? The 10th contestant is Ji Tianxing? Ji Tianxing? Isn't he the crown prince who barged into the city lord's mansion at night and captured city lord Qinzheng? Oh my god! It was actually him? That guy is so daring. It's already surprising that the Imperial Court didn't punish him, but they actually let him participate in the competition? The other contestants are all descendants of aristocratic families and have powerful backgrounds behind them. Why does this guy have nothing? Apart from being a prince, he has no background at all. And he is the weakest of them all, only at the 2nd level of Sky Origin stage. Tisk TSK, adding this guy to the list of candidates is a total joke. Do you want to use his weakness to set off the strength of the other contestants? Most people didn't understand this at all. They were mocking him and taking pleasure in his misfortune. In the eyes of the crowd, Ji Tianxing's strength and influence were completely incomparable to the other participants. If he could become the Tianqian region lord, it would be the biggest joke in the world. All kinds of discussions and mocking laughter poured into the ears of Ji Tianxing and the others like a tide. Ji Ku and Qian Yu were full of anger. In their anger, they wanted to reason with the people who were mocking them. Ji Tianxing was not angry. He said indifferently, "Don't bother about those people. They are just ignorant weaklings. They are weak, but they worship the strong. They themselves were poor and lowly, but they admired and envied the influential figures of the rich and powerful families. For such people, only facts can shut their mouths and convince them wholeheartedly." When Ji Ku and Yen heard this, they immediately nodded in agreement. Humph! These people who look down on others are too despicable. When Senior Tianxing becomes the Tianqian region lord, I'd like to see if these ignorant bastards will be so shocked that their eyeballs will fall out and they will be so ashamed that they won't be able to show their faces. Kuan Wu was silent. He glanced sideways at Ji Ku and Yen. He thought to himself, these 2 little guys don't understand how terrifying those genius princes are. They trust Ji Tianxing so much that it's almost blind. Not to mention Duanmu Yulong and Qianshan Jinwu, even those ordinary princes and geniuses are not people that Ji Tianxing can defeat. Although he is in the list of participants, he is destined to be eliminated. Kuan Wu sighed silently. He seemed to have foreseen the result. Ji Tianxing did not say anything else. He led the crowd out of the square and returned to Yunlan courtyard. The Imperial Court's edict had been issued, and the list of participants was out. The Imperial Guard captain put away the golden jade slip and led the 8 Imperial Guards out of the square and back to the Imperial Court. The stone tablet on the Emperor token stage was still shining with golden light and exuding a sacred and majestic aura. According to the usual practice, the thousands of golden words on the stone tablet would be displayed on the Emperor token stage for about half a month before disappearing on its own. The edict issued by the Imperial Court was not only displayed in Liantian City, but also in all the human cities in Zhongzhou. Almost at the same time, in the hundreds of human cities in Zhongzhou, hundreds of millions of people were discussing the list. Duanmu Yulong, Shenshan Jinwu, and the others were naturally the focus of the people. However, the person that the commoners were talking about the most was Ji Tianxing, a commoner with no reputation. The people in Zhongzhou's cities were still unfamiliar with the name Ji Tianxing. Even if some people had heard of him, it was because he had defeated the emperor on the emperor platform and successfully entered the emperor mansion. In the eyes of the people in Zhongzhou, although he was a noble prince, he had just entered the emperor mansion. His strength was too weak and could not be compared with the other 9 participants. No one was optimistic about him. Most of them were even gloating and mocking him, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. After returning to Yun Lan's residence, Ji Tianxing greeted Yun Yao. There were still 13 days until the end of the month. In the next few days, he would continue to cultivate in seclusion. He would only come out of seclusion at the end of the month and head to the Imperial Court to participate in the second round of the assessment. Yun Yao also learned about the list of participants. She knew that the other 9 participants were all geniuses and princes. Ji Tianxing wanted to stand out from the other 10 participants and become the Tianshan region lord. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, she had confidence in Ji Tianxing and agreed with his decision. She told him to cultivate in seclusion without worrying about anything else. Ji Tianxing gave Ji Ku and Yan a few more instructions before returning to the secret room in his residence. After entering the secret room, he activated the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array and adjusted the gravity to 15 times. He cultivated in a self-destructive way. After all, with his current strength, he could not compete with Duanmu Yulong and Qianshan Jinwu. He only had 13 days left. Chapter 579. Ji Tianxing was sitting cross-legged in the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array. His body was covered in colorful light. The 15x gravity and the power of the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array made him suffer a horrible pressure. The skin all over his body was constantly cracking, revealing dense cracks. Even the tiny blood vessels were rupturing. However, he had cultivated the 8th level of the Sword Heart Tao. He had used his majestic and vigorous true essence to constantly heal his injuries. Plus, he had merged with the Kenshin blood meridians. His body's self-healing ability was very strong. The wounds on his skin, bones, and flesh were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then they cracked and healed again. Under the condition of cracking and healing, Ji Tianxing suffered an unimaginable pain. It was like his body was being cut by thousands of knives. Even though his soul had merged with the Nirvana crystal, his soul power was strong and his will was firm. However, the pain made him want to die. He almost fainted. However, he gritted his teeth and persevered with his tenacious willpower and the belief in his heart. Since I have decided to take the position of Tianshan Region Lord, I will not give up so easily. No matter how much pain I have to endure, I have to reach Sky Origin Stage LV3 in 13 days. The position of Tianshan Region Lord must not fall into the hands of the Duanmu family. Those who looked down on me, mocked me, and gloated over my misfortune will regret it. Ji Tianxing shouted in his heart. He crazily operated his martial arts to strengthen his body and perfect his sword body. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 6 days passed. After 6 days of crazy cultivation, Ji Tianxing finally adapted to the 15x gravity. It was not as painful as before. His power and physical strength had increased by 20%. He was closer to Sky Origin Stage LV3. Ji Tianxing did not stop cultivating. He sat cross-legged in the array and operated his martial arts to strengthen his body. There are 7 days left. I have to increase my power by 20% and reach Sky Origin Stage LV3. Under the 15x gravity, my power is increasing slower and slower. Since that is the case, let's adjust the gravity to 18x. He adjusted the Heavenly Spirit Heavy Array to increase the gravity to 18x. Suddenly, an invisible gravitational force enveloped him, and the skin all over his body quickly cracked open, and dark red blood seeped out. A heart-wrenching pain came, causing his muscles and nerves to convulse and break out in cold sweat. However, he gritted his teeth and continued to cultivate without any regard for the consequences. In addition to tempering his body, he also divided his attention and cultivated the Tianxing 5 Extremes cultivation method at the same time. This heaven-level superior-grade cultivation method not only contained the internal cultivation method for cultivating the power of the 5 elements, but also 6 very special and mysterious secret skills of the 5 elements. The first move was called Slash of the Metal Emperor. It used the ultimate power of the metal element between heaven and earth to slash out a sword that could tear apart heaven and earth. The second move was called the Wood Emperor's Umbrella. It could draw upon the purest wood-type energy in the world to condense into a large umbrella that could cover the sky. It could be used for both offense and defense, and it also had the ability to heal injuries. The third secret skill was called Blackwater Rope, the fourth secret skill was called Scorching Sun Flame, and the fifth secret skill was called Earth Emperor Shield. The first 5 secret skills used the power of each element, while the 6th secret skill was the most powerful one. It was called Tianxing's 5 Extremes. This secret skill combined the power of the 5 elements. It could allow a cultivator to fly in the sky, walk on fire and water, and control everything. Tianxing knew that if he could cultivate Tianxing's 5 Extremes to a high level, he would be able to travel in the world and control everything. That would be a very mysterious and unimaginable state. 7 days had passed without him noticing. He had been cultivating in seclusion for 13 days. It was time for him to come out. At this moment, he had finally improved his cultivation by 100%. He had reached the 3rd level of Sky Origin Stage. At the moment when he successfully broke through, Tianxing's body lit up with colorful spiritual light. His body was bursting with a tremendous amount of true origin qi. He operated his martial art and shook it slightly. The dust and dirt on his white robe were all removed. His robe was now spotless. He was not far away from the ultimate body of sword. His body was transparent, and he could perfectly communicate with the spiritual qi in the world. Of course, his true origin qi, soul, physical defense, speed, and strength had all been doubled. With all these factors combined, his real combat ability was more than twice as powerful as before. Phew! Tianxing ended his cultivation. He exhaled a mouthful of colorful turbid air and opened his eyes. At that moment, there seemed to be thunder and lightning bursting out from his clear and deep eyes, tearing apart the dark space in front of him. A confident and overbearing aura of a powerhouse was emitted from his body. He got up, dusted his robe, and stepped out of the secret room. Swish! He opened the door of the secret room and returned to the room. It was early in the morning. The sky outside the window was getting brighter. There was a glimmer of the morning sun. At the door, Yun Yao, Jiku, Tianhe, and the others were already waiting for him. Seeing Tianxing, everyone smiled excitedly and expectantly. Yun Yao was the first to speak. She asked in a concerned tone, "Tianxing, you've finally come out. How's your cultivation?" Ji and Yen said in unison, "Look at brother Tianxing in high spirits. Your strength must have improved again." Xianyu looked at Tianxing with a smile and said confidently, "I'm willing to bet that old Ji has broken through to the next level." Everyone looked at him expectantly, waiting for him to announce the result. Tianxing did not say anything. He just smiled and nodded. After getting his confirmation, everyone was pleasantly surprised and felt that it was incredible. This is incredible. Brother Tianxing, you've improved from Sky Origin Stage LV2 to Sky Origin Stage LV3 in less than a month? This is a miracle. Even the number 1 genius of the human race, Long Yunxiao, took more than half a year to improve from Sky Origin Stage LV1 to Sky Origin Stage LV2. If those snobbish fellows were to know of this news, they would definitely be scared to death. Ji Tianxing smiled confidently and said, "Well, the Imperial Court will hold the second round of the assessment today. Let's set off now." After saying that, he led everyone out of Yunlan Courtyard and rushed to the Imperial Court as fast as lightning. He flew in the front while Yun Yao rode on the spiritual crane and followed closely behind. Qian Yu carried Yan, and Ji Ku and followed them. About 2 hours later, everyone arrived at the Imperial Court and came to the foot of sky-reaching peak. Tens of thousands of martial artists had already gathered at the huge square at the foot of the mountain. These people had heard the news in advance and came to watch the second round of the assessment. Only a small number of them were the people of the surrounding cities. Most of them were the masters and powerhouses of various forces. Ji Tianxing landed on the square. After observing for a while, he knew that the second round of the assessment would be held at the square at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 580. On the square at the foot of sky-reaching peak, tens of thousands of people were gathered in a circle. In the middle of the square, there was a high platform with a radius of 100 meters. More than 100 Imperial Court guards in golden armor were guarding the high platform. On a small piece of empty land near the high platform, there were 9 valiant and noble powerhouses. Those 9 divine origin powerhouses were the 9 prodigies on the list. They stood proudly in the middle of the square and looked at the high platform calmly, waiting for the test to begin. The tens of thousands of people in the square had their eyes on those 9 prodigies. They were quietly sizing them up and discussing in low voices. Many cultivators and commoners had heard of those 9 prodigies, but they had never seen them in person. At that moment, they were all excited to see those prodigies in person. Ji Tianxing led Yun Yao and the others through the crowded square and toward the high platform. When he arrived at the front of the crowd, he saw a few familiar thearchs who were also watching the test. Those people were Kun Wu, Murong Lingfeng, Ling Yixiong, Fox Princess from the Demon Clan, and Crown Prince Tai Yi from the Aquatic Clan. Ling Yixiong and Kun Wu nodded at him when they saw him. Ji Tianxing greeted the two of them and walked to the empty land below the high platform. He stood side by side with the 9 prodigies and waited for the test to begin. The high platform was empty. There were no Imperial Court powerhouses. There was only an ancient stone door standing there. That dark brown stone door, which was 30 meters tall, seemed to have experienced thousands of years. It exuded an ancient aura. Mysterious array patterns were engraved on the stone door, faintly exuding the power of the array. However, Ji Tianxing could not see through the formation on the stone door even after observing it for a while. He could not tell what type of array it was, nor could he tell the grade of the array. This result made him very sure that the array on the stone door, which looked simple and unadorned, must have surpassed the divine origin level. It should be a soul-level array. While he was observing the stone door, the prodigies beside him were also secretly sizing it up. The Sky Prides had already made sufficient preparations and understood the information of each contestant. However, everyone was unfamiliar with Ji Tianxing. It was the first time for many of them to see him. While everyone was sizing him up, his expression didn't change in the slightest. His demeanor was still as calm as ever. He even sized up the other heaven's favorites without hesitation. On the way to Imperial Court just now, Yun Yao gave him a piece of information about the other contestants. Ji Tianxing looked at the prodigies around him and quickly identified them. The most eye-catching one was a young man who was tall and sturdy like an iron tower, wearing a golden dragon-patterned armor. This person had thick brows and large eyes. His face was firm and resolute as if it was carved by a blade, and his features were clearly defined. Moreover, his eyes that were large like copper bells contained a terrifying might. His entire body exuded a dense murderous aura. This was a murderous aura that had been tempered through hundreds of battles and killing tens of thousands of enemies. It was impossible for ordinary experts to possess such a murderous aura. Without a doubt, this person was the descendant of a divine general, Yu Zhengfei of River Origin City's Yu family. The other person who attracted Ji Tianxing's attention was a handsome young man wearing a silver-white star-patterned robe and carrying an ancient cloud-scarred sword on his back. This person was tall and handsome. He exuded an otherworldly aura. He didn't seem like someone from the mortal world. Instead, he seemed more like a reclusive sword Dao grandmaster. Ji Tianxing sensed a majestic and exquisite sword intent from this person. He immediately confirmed that this young man who looked to be in his 30s must be the top disciple of Green Crane Valley's sword faction, Di Jianqing. Di Jianqing's actual age was 46. However, martial artists who had reached the primal core realm and above could maintain their youthful appearance. For example, a divine prime expert like Chu Tianxing would look like a middle-aged man even if he lived to 150 years old. Therefore, a divine prime expert like Di Jianqing who was 46 years old was truly very young and extremely talented. Apart from Yu Zhengfei and Di Jianqing, the two people Ji Tianxing paid the most attention to were Duanmu Yulong and Qian Shanzhenwu. Duanmu Yulong was the imperial prince of the monarch residence. He had met him several times and wasn't unfamiliar with him. Qian Shanzhenwu, who had been famous for a long time but had never met before, attracted his attention. Among the 10 participants, Qian Shanzhenwu was the oldest, already 50 years old. However, he was the strongest, having reached Sky Origin Stage 7th layer. No one could catch up to him. Moreover, Qian Shanzhenwu's appearance and temperament were no different from a 30-year-old youth. He wore a black robe, a black cape embroidered with dragons, and a purple gold crown on his head. His bronze face revealed a resolute and domineering aura. When Ji Tianxing sized him up, their gazes met. Ji Tianxing immediately felt that in Qian Shanzhenwu's deep eyes, there was a coldness like a 1,000-year-old ice that wouldn't melt. It sent chills down one's spine and made one's heart tremble. He could feel that Qian Shanzhenwu must be the kind of person who would kill without batting an eyelid. He was extremely powerful and ruthless. Not long after, 3 streams of light flew down from the top of the sky-connecting peak. The person in the lead was the imperial tutor. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and flew in the air like an immortal. Behind him was the Emperor Long Yunxiao on his left, and a guard commander on his right. The 3 flew down from the top of the mountain and landed on the high platform in the middle of the square under everyone's gaze. Immediately, hundreds of golden armor guards knelt down on one knee and saluted. Ji Tianxing, the 9 elites, and the nearly 10,000 martial artists in the square also bowed to the imperial tutor and the emperor. The imperial tutor stood proudly on the platform and nodded slightly. He waved his horsetail whisk and motioned everyone to rise. Then, the imperial tutor said in a dignified tone, "Today, the 10 contestants are gathered in the imperial court. Under the supervision of the imperial court and the people, the second round of assessment will be carried out. This assessment will be personally presided over and supervised by me. Later, I will open the portal and send the 10 contestants to the giant holy city. Now, the giant holy city is suffering from a disaster. The people are in a panic and have no way to make a living. After the 10 contestants arrive at the giant holy city, they must try their best to resolve the crisis and save the people of the giant holy city. In the process, everyone can show their strengths and use various means and methods. After this assessment, the imperial court will conduct a comprehensive assessment based on everyone's performance in the giant holy city. At that time, 5 out of the 10 contestants will pass the assessment and the other 5 will be eliminated." After hearing the imperial tutor's words, Ji Tianxing and the 9 elites' expressions changed slightly and revealed complicated expressions. The nearly 10,000 people in the square all looked at the ancient stone door on the high platform in unison, and a burst of clamorous discussion broke out. "So this is the second round of assessment. I thought it would be a martial arts competition. The imperial court wants to select the Tianshan region lord. The requirements for the contestants must be very strict. Not only must they be powerful, but they must also test other abilities, right? The 10 elites will enter a city and show their strengths to resolve the crisis. It must be very exciting, right? Will they fight with each other and kill each other?" Chapter 581. It didn't take long for the imperial tutor to announce the official start of the assessment. After that, he used his power to release a 5-colored aura and injected it into the ancient stone gate to open the portal. Duanmu Yulong, Qian Shanzhenwu, and the others took the lead and stepped into the portal. Sush. With a flash of white light, Duanmu Yulong, Xianshan Jinwu, and the others disappeared into the portal. Ji Tianxing was the last to enter the portal. After passing through the portal, he was teleported to Giant Holy City like the other 9 participants. At this time, the Imperial Tutor used his majestic power to activate the array on the high platform. Then, a white light shield with a radius of dozens of meters appeared on the high platform. The surface of the light shield was like a mirror or a screen, showing the image of Giant Holy City and the figures of the 10 participants. Nearly 10,000 people in the square could see the movements of Ji Tianxing and the others through the images on the light shield. In this way, the second round of assessment was carried out under the supervision of the people. What Ji Tianxing and the others did in Giant Holy City would be shown to the public without any omission. With a flash of white light, Ji Tianxing saw the scene in front of him change. He appeared out of thin air on a dark brown wasteland, stepping on countless broken blue stones. He looked down and saw that the broken stones were originally slabs of blue stone. There was a whistling cold wind blowing around with a bit of chilliness and a murderous aura. The sky was full of haze and there were large patches of gray fog and thick clouds, making the light between heaven and earth dim and the atmosphere very depressing. Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked ahead. He saw a dark brown, ancient city 1,000 meters away. It was a huge and majestic ancient city with towering walls up to 100 meters high and a wide gate that could allow 10 horses to walk side by side. On the lintel above the city gate, there were 3 quaint words engraved. Giant Holy City. There was a wide moat outside the city gate. In the nearly 100-meter wide moat, there was a surging river. However, this ancient and majestic city that seemed to have a history of thousands of years was dilapidated at this time. The tall and wide city gate was half closed. The drawbridge of the city gate had long been broken and scattered on the ground. Huge cracks also appeared on the towering and sturdy stone walls, revealing many gaps. The broken bricks were scattered on the ground and in the moat. The wide moat had long been blocked. The surging river water had already overflowed the riverbank and was pouring into the city gate. Ji Tianxing could still clearly hear cries and shouts coming from all over the city. There were also raging flames and thick smoke rising into the sky. There was no doubt that this ancient giant spiritual city had just experienced a disaster. Ji Tianxing frowned and observed for a moment. Then he frowned and whispered, "What disaster has this giant spirit city experienced? Is it a natural disaster or a war?" There was no answer. He could only wait until he entered the city to investigate. The other contestants obviously had the same idea. Everyone took a few glances at the city gate, then stepped across the dark brown wasteland and rushed towards the city gate. Ji Tianxing was not willing to fall behind. He quickly followed the footsteps of the contestants and arrived at the city gate. There were many huge bricks scattered in the wide city gate, as well as some fragments of weapons and armors, and more than a dozen guards' bodies. But other than that, there were no living guards inside or outside the city gate. After discovering the situation, several contestants immediately expressed their opinions. Duanmu Yulong said with a dignified expression, "We are very unfamiliar with this giant spiritual city. We still don't know what happened here. It is imperative that we enter the city as soon as possible to investigate the disaster so that we can find a way to save the people." Among the 10 contestants, his status was the most distinguished. There was a faint sense of controlling the overall situation in his tone. Qianshan Jinwu exuded a majestic aura. With a gloomy face, he said in a dignified tone, "The city gate is half closed. More than a dozen guards have died in battle, but no other guards have appeared. Such a completely unguarded situation can only explain one problem. The giant spiritual city must have suffered heavy casualties and the whole city is in chaos. In my opinion, we should enter the city first and understand the situation from the people. We should pacify the people as soon as possible and control the chaotic situation in the city." Everyone knew that Qianshan Jinwu was the governor of Yeni City and had rich experience in managing a city. This assessment was very beneficial to him, which greatly increased his chances of winning the title of chief. What he said was also a clear and organized decision. Several contestants immediately nodded and agreed with Qianshan Jinwu's words. Everyone crossed the brick ruins in the city gate and entered the giant spiritual city to check the situation in the city. Duanmu Yulong spoke for the first time. He wanted to show his majesty and establish prestige as soon as possible. But he did not expect that Qianshan Jinwu's seemingly casual words would suppress his limelight and win the support of several geniuses. This made him a little unhappy. He frowned and wanted to compete with Qianshan Jinwu. After all, in everyone's opinion, the winner and loser would be decided between him and Qianshan Jinwu in this battle for the position of chief. However, no one noticed that Ji Tianxing, who had been silent all this time, was not only looking around with sharp eyes, but also carefully observing a few cracks. He even checked the corpses of the guards that were buried in the ruins and turned into minced meat. Although he did not speak, he had a prediction and judgment in his heart. Judging from the damage to the city wall and the city gate, the disaster in the giant spiritual city is not a natural disaster or a war, but an invasion by the strong. The guards were not killed by weapons, but directly killed by the powerful shock wave. Their bodies were smashed into meat paste by the gravel. While this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianxing was also secretly vigilant. In the unfamiliar giant spiritual city, no one knew what dangers there would be. He must act steadily. After a while, everyone entered the giant spiritual city and saw the situation in the city clearly. They saw that the broad streets in the city had been twisted and broken, and there were many gullies and pits. Most of the tall buildings and buildings on both sides of the street were also broken or collapsed, turning into ruins. Many places were ablaze with raging flames and thick smoke rising into the air. Many people were seriously injured and panicked. While running away in a panic, they kept shouting in grief and indignation. Duanmu Yulong and several contestants quickly stopped several people who were fleeing in panic and asked what had happened in the city. Those people were so frightened that their minds were a little confused. Chapter 582. Qianshan Jinwu frowned when he saw that the contestants couldn't get an answer. Expressionlessly, he sent out a few streaks of green light, knocking those commoners unconscious. Then, with a wave of his hand, he grabbed the fainted commoners and threw them to the candidates behind him. It's useless to ask them. Take them with you and see what happens in the city. Qianshan Jinwu's method might not be effective, but it was very domineering. The contestants didn't want to take the unconscious people with them, nor did they want to follow Qianshan Jinwu's orders. After all, they weren't his subordinates. However, they didn't dare to leave the unconscious people behind. They were afraid that it would affect their performance and cause them to be eliminated by the imperial court. Lu Zikang, Lu Ziyuan, and the others had no choice but to take the unconscious people and follow Qianshan Jinwu to the city. Duanmu Yulong saw that the situation wasn't good. He frowned and thought for a while. Qianshan Jinwu had already seized the initiative. He appeared very strong and suppressed his aura. Therefore, he said to the contestants with a serious expression, "The situation in the city is complicated and urgent. We have to split up to save time. I'm going to the area on the left to investigate. Who wants to go with me?" The contestants immediately understood that Duanmu Yulong wanted to split up with Qianshan Jinwu to establish his authority. If they didn't go with him, they would be suppressed and ordered by Qianshan Jinwu. Compared to Qianshan Jinwu's domineering and cold attitude, the princes were more inclined to follow Duanmu Yulong. Therefore, Lu Zikang, Yi Yifan, and Lu Ziyuan immediately expressed their opinions. "Brother Duanmu, we're willing to go with you." "I'll go with you too." Di Jianqing from the sword faction and Yu Zhengfei in armor didn't choose to follow Duanmu Yulong or stay with Qianshan Jinwu. Both of them wanted to go into the city alone to investigate. They casually found an excuse, bowed to the crowd, and left. Ji Tianxing didn't even bother to find an excuse. He left silently and wanted to go alone. He quickly passed through the ruins and streets and rushed to the east of the city. There were only 2 contestants left. They were carrying a few unconscious people. They awkwardly stayed where they were and could only follow Qianshan Jinwu. Just like that, the 10 contestants were divided into 5 groups before they had even investigated the cause of the disaster. They went their separate ways in the city. On the square at the foot of heaven-reaching peak, tens of thousands of people saw this scene through the screen. Everyone realized that the relationship between the 10 contestants was a little subtle, and they immediately began to discuss in whispers. The battle for the Heavenly Stellar Region Lord position is indeed a battle between Duanmu Yulong and Qianshan Jinwu. Although Duanmu Yulong is the prince of an aristocratic family and has a noble status, he is still too young. I'm afraid he is no match for Qianshan Jinwu. After all, Qianshan Jinwu has been the city lord for many years. He is very powerful, decisive, and overbearing. His aura is much stronger than Duanmu Yulong's. When Duanmu Yulong wanted to split up, I thought that the 10 prodigies were going to split into 2 factions. I didn't expect Di Jianqing and Yu Zhengfei to be so confident and want to act alone. Only the weak will act together with the strong. Those who are confident will act alone. What's wrong with that Ji Tianqing? As the prince of an aristocratic family, how dare he not follow Duanmu Yulong and act alone? I think it must be because Ji Tianqing is too weak and no one wants to act with him, right? This is going to be awkward. Tens of thousands of people stared at the screen as they watched and discussed. They were all looking forward to a good show. Ji Kuhinu and the rest stared at Ji Tianqing's figure in the screen, silently cheering for him in their hearts. After Ji Tianqing left the group of contestants, he rushed toward the East City. As soon as he entered a street, he saw many people running away or looking for something in the ruins on both sides of the street. There was a middle-aged couple in plain clothes digging desperately in the ruins. Their faces were filled with anxiety and worry, and their eyes were filled with tears. The 2 of them dug with their bare hands. Even though their hands were bleeding, they didn't feel any pain. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing flew over in a flash and landed beside the couple. "Brother, what are you looking for?" He thought that the couple would be reluctant to part with their family's treasures. However, the middle-aged woman looked at him and cried with a face full of pain and anxiety, "The house has collapsed, but my poor child is still buried inside." The middle-aged man's face also darkened. As he dug, he explained, "We were busy outside the house. Who would have thought that the damn devil would suddenly appear and start a massacre in the city? Half of the city has been destroyed. Our house has collapsed, but our child is still buried. Young master, can you help us?" Devil? Start a massacre in the city? Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed something, but he didn't ask. The most important thing now was to save the child. He released his soul sense to cover the ruins in front of him and immediately found that a little girl in a floral cotton-padded jacket was curled up in the depths of the ruins. The little girl with pigtails was about 6 or 7 years old and looked very cute. However, she had been injured by the rubble, and there were blood stains on her head and legs. She had already fainted. "Step back and let me do it." While speaking, Ji Tianqing slowly stretched out his right palm and manipulated the powerful earth power to surge into the ruins. Immediately, the mountainous pile of rubble automatically separated into 2 sides. In the blink of an eye, the 4-meter-high ruins were divided into 2 halves, and a wide passage appeared. At the end of the passage was the depths of the ruins. The little girl was curled up on the ground, and the rubble around her had already been removed. Ji Tianqing reached out and grabbed at the air, saving the little girl. He held the little girl in his arms and injected the green wood genuine essence into the little girl's body. In the blink of an eye, the green wood genuine essence, which contained rich vitality, healed her wounds and woke her up. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged couple was shocked, as if they had seen a miracle. After they came to their senses, they immediately knelt down and kowtowed to Ji Tianqing with tears in their eyes. "Young master, oh no, benefactor, thank you so much. Benefactor's means are just like that of an immortal. We will never forget your great kindness. We are willing to do anything to repay you." Ji Tianqing raised his right hand and helped the couple up with an invisible force. He handed the little girl to the middle-aged woman and said in a kind tone, "It's just a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. Can the 2 of you please tell me in detail what exactly happened in the city before this?" Chapter 583. The middle-aged couple was very grateful to Ji Tianqing. When they heard his inquiry, they naturally told him the truth. The little girl was already awake and crying in fear. The middle-aged woman was busy coaxing her daughter, and the middle-aged man explained to Ji Tianxing, "Benefactor, just this morning, a golden light suddenly flew from the sky and arrived outside the city gate. The golden light turned into a 100-meter-tall giant. It was as powerful as a god. With a wave of its hand, it smashed the city wall and smashed the entire street. It was an out-and-out devil. It wantonly destroyed the houses and buildings in the city and killed countless people." At this time, the middle-aged woman frowned and whispered, "That's not a devil. It's clearly the Juling god. It's the guardian of the giant holy city." The middle-aged man glared at her and said with righteous indignation, "What guardian? If it's really the guardian, why did it start a massacre in the city and almost killed our daughter?" Hearing this, Ji Tianxing suddenly frowned and asked doubtfully, "The Juling god? It's the guardian of the giant holy city? What's going on?" The middle-aged man sighed and said in a low voice, "For hundreds of years, the people of the giant holy city have piously believed in the Juling god. It said that the giant holy city was just a small town 300 years ago. It was surrounded by dangerous mountains and rivers, and countless demons and ghosts were entrenched there. Those demons and ghosts often came to the town to catch people and eat them. Every year, they also asked the people to offer virgin boys and girls as sacrifices. Later, a golden giant came to the town and sympathized with the sufferings of the people. So, he wiped out those demons and ghosts. Since then, the town was safe and peaceful, and no demons and ghosts came to harass us. After a few decades, the population of the town increased and it became a city, named the Giant Holy City. The people of the city were grateful for the protection of the Juling god, so they built a temple and worshipped the Juling god with incense. This custom continued for hundreds of years. I never believed in these things, but my wife has always believed in the Juling god. Every month, she goes to the temple to worship incense." Speaking up to here, the middle-aged man's face was full of anger, and he said in a low voice, "I don't know why, but that Juling Shin hasn't appeared in the world for over 200 years. This time, he suddenly started a massacre and almost destroyed half of the city. Gods and protectors? What was the difference between them and those demons and ghosts? Aren't they still harming the common people and treating our lives like grass?" The middle-aged woman quickly shook her head and explained in a low voice, "It's not like that. There must be a reason for the Juling god to be angry. He wouldn't kill for no reason. Everyone is talking about it. It must be because the giant miracle god hasn't appeared in the world for more than 200 years, and the people don't believe in him devoutly. The incense in the temple is not strong, and this angered the giant miracle god." After saying that, she glanced at her husband and grumbled, "It's because many of the citizens in the city are like you. They don't believe in the giant miracle god and aren't grateful for its protection. That's why the gods have punished them. Nonsense." The middle-aged man glared at his wife and growled with a serious expression. The middle-aged woman suddenly shut up and concentrated on coaxing the child. Ji Tianxing asked a few more questions, but the middle-aged man didn't know the details and couldn't answer him. Seeing that the couple didn't have a deep understanding of the giant miracle god, Ji Tianxing couldn't get any more clues and had to give up. After he turned and left, he flapped his golden wings and flew into the sky. He looked down at the situation in the city. He saw that the East City District and the South City District of the giant miracle god city were basically destroyed into ruins. Countless streets and alleys, and hundreds of thousands of houses and buildings were turned into ruins. In the ruins, countless corpses of the common people were buried. At least tens of thousands of common people were still searching for their relatives in the ruins or digging for their property and money. The remaining hundreds of thousands of common people had already fled the two ruined areas and poured into the West City District and the North City District like a tide. In the square in the center of the giant miracle god city, thousands of common people gathered. They were all poor homeless people and most of them were injured. Around the huge city lord's mansion, it was also crowded with people who suffered. They were shouting like a flash flood, asking the city lord's mansion to come forward to solve the disaster. But the city lord's mansion's gate was closed, and hundreds of guards were guarding the courtyard walls, waiting for the common people to enter. The giant miracle god city suffered such a disaster, and the city lord's mansion was helpless. Moreover, the devil who destroyed the houses and buildings and caused the deaths of countless common people was actually the guardian god that the common people had believed in for hundreds of years. Now the common people in the city were complaining everywhere, and the public was excited, but their opinions were not unified. Ji Tianxing listened attentively for a while and heard several voices. Many people thought that this disaster was the wrath of the giant miracle god and the punishment for the disrespectful. They wanted to atone for their sins to the giant miracle god and prove their devout belief in the giant miracle god. Another part of the people felt that the giant miracle god was so cruel and evil that it was not a guardian god at all. It was no different from a demon or a ghost. These people hoped that the city lord's mansion would find a way to get rid of the evil giant miracle god, even if the price was high. And more common people were eager to be rescued, search for missing relatives, and rebuild destroyed houses and homes. In short, the entire giant miracle god city was in a mess, and no one could solve it. After figuring out the situation in the city, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate to fly over the square in the city. In the face of a disaster, it is more important to save the dying and heal the wounded than to deal with the giant miracle god. He murmured silently in his heart, and then waved his hand to release thousands of colorful spirit lights, which scattered on the edge of the square. After a while, he placed hundreds of spirit stones around the square and arranged the foundation of a Tianyuan array. Then he displayed his unfathomable array attainments and began to arrange the Greenwood Life Accumulation Array. After this Tianyuan array was set up, it could gather the wood spirit chi within a radius of hundreds of miles and form a steady stream of greenwood vitality. The greenwood vitality was a pure life force, which could not only heal the injuries of the tens of thousands of common people, but also replenish their life and physical strength. The wounded gathered in the square were all ordinary people. If no one took care of and provided for them, they would soon die in pain, hunger, and cold. When Ji Tianxing set up the Grand Heavenly Essence formation, he also fused the Wood Emperor's umbrella into the formation. The Wood Emperor umbrella was also a secret technique that used the Greenwood Spirit Chi to heal the wounded. When used together with the Greenwood Life Accumulation Array, it would definitely have a miraculous effect. The tens of thousands of wounded people in the square looked up at Ji Tianxing in the sky. They were shocked and puzzled, and they all discussed with fear. No one had seen him before, so they didn't know whether he was good or evil, let alone what he wanted to do. However, 2 hours later, when Ji Tianxing finished setting up the Greenwood Life Nurturing Grand Formation, everyone was shocked and understood his intentions. A green light barrier with a radius of 1,000 meters appeared. It was like a green umbrella that covered the sky, covering the entire plaza. The big green umbrella bloomed with a dazzling green light, sprinkling down thousands of green silk ribbons, which fell on the wounded people like a continuous drizzle. The endless green silk ribbons, which contained the pure and majestic greenwood vitality, entered the bodies of the wounded people and quickly healed their injuries. Everyone could feel that under the baptism of the green silk ribbons, not only were their injuries quickly healed, but even their weak bodies were gradually recovering their physical strength. The wounded people who were on the verge of death also had their lives saved. Chapter 584. The tens of thousands of people might have seen doctors with superb medical skills, but they had never seen a miracle-working doctor like Ji Tianxing, who had the means to create miracles. No matter how powerful an ordinary medical expert was, he could only treat the patients one by one. Ji Tianxing directly set up a Tianyuan array and healed tens of thousands of injured people at the same time with the help of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. What kind of magical means was that? Ji Tianxing's image at the moment, in the eyes of tens of thousands of people, was really like an immortal descending to the mortal world. Tens of thousands of people were grateful to him, grateful and worshipping him to the extreme. For the first time, Ji Tianxing used the Wooden Emperor umbrella and the Green Wood Life Generating Array together. Seeing the remarkable effect of this method, the tens of thousands of injured people were grateful to him, and he also felt gratified. So, he said in a loud voice, "Those who are in pain and have no medical treatment can come to the square in the city. This array can save the dying and heal the injured. It can treat everyone's injuries and relieve their pain." His voice was like rolling thunder, spreading over an area with a radius of dozens of miles. More than half of the people in Giant Holy City could hear his voice. Suddenly, the injured people in the East City and the South City who had no medical treatment were full of excitement and surprise, and hurried to the square in the city. Several talents who were investigating the cause of the accident in the city certainly heard Ji Tianxing's voice. When they flew into the sky and saw the scene in the square in the city, they were shocked. No one expected that Ji Tianxing, who seemed to be the weakest and most inconspicuous, could do such an incredible feat. Although with the means of Qianshan Jinwu and Duanwu Yulong, they might also be able to do what Ji Tianxing did. But they were busy with other things and didn't think of this method at all, nor did they think of treating the injured people. At this moment, Qianshan Jinwu was talking with the giant Holy City Lord in the City Lord's mansion with two candidates. Qianshan Jinwu's posture was very tough and overbearing. He ordered the giant Holy City Lord to open the government office and send guards and city guards to rescue and protect the people in the city, clean up the ruins in time, and deal with the aftermath. However, the giant Holy City Lord didn't know him at all. How could he listen to the orders of a stranger? Not only did the giant Spirit City Lord scold Qianshan Jinwu, but he also ordered the guards to drive him out of the City Lord's mansion. The result was obvious. Qianshan Jinwu ruthlessly and decisively stabbed the giant Spirit City Lord to death. Those guards who wanted to protect the City Lord were also killed by him in seconds. Suddenly, Qianshan Jinwu shocked everyone with his ruthless methods. He successfully obtained the City Lord's golden seal and took control of the City Lord's mansion. He sat in the City Lord's mansion and issued a series of orders in the name of the giant Spirit City Lord. Qianshan Jinwu had been in charge of Smoke Wing City for many years. He was very experienced in dispatching troops, managing cities, and dealing with emergencies. Under his command, the City Lord's manor first issued the City Lord's order to calm the people down. Then, the hundreds of guards and thousands of city guards of the City Lord's mansion were all mobilized to search and rescue in the city and deal with the aftermath. On the other side, Duanwu Yulong was investigating the South City ruins. When he learned of Qianshan Jinwu's actions and saw Ji Tianxing's wood emperor umbrella, his face turned green with anger. Qianshan Jinwu was used to being the city lord and his methods were very tough. He was not surprised that he could make such a decision. However, not only did Qianshan Jinwu's performance was very outstanding, but even Ji Tianxing, who seemed to be the weakest guy, made such a magnificent feat and won the worship of thousands of people. Duanwu Yulong was completely defeated by the two. He seemed to have done nothing. How could he not be angry? In this awkward situation, Lu Zikang, Yi Yifan, and Lu Ziyuan were a little anxious. They all gave advice to Duanwu Yulong. Brother Duanwu, Qianshan Jinwu, and Ji Tianxing have made a dazzling performance. We have to do something. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a loss of face for us? Brother Duanwu, Qianshan Jinwu seized the City Lord's mansion and issued orders in the name of the City Lord. Ji Tianxing also set up a large array to save thousands of people. We have to think of a way to make some contributions. I have a treasure here called the Thick Earth Ruler. It can mobilize the power of the earth element in a radius of dozens of miles. Whether it's cutting a mountain or paving a road, it can be done with a flip of the palm. Brother Duanwu, perhaps we can use this to make some contributions. Hearing Lu Ziyuan's words, Duanwu Yulong immediately understood his meaning. Very good. Then many thanks, Brother Lu. Let's borrow the power of the Thick Earth Ruler and join hands to cast a spell to clean up these ruins. It will also be a great contribution. After making up their minds, Duanwu Yulong and the other three joined hands to cast a spell to clean up the ruins. Lu Ziyuan, Yi Yifan, and Lu Zikang scattered around the ruins. They used a secret technique to gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to assist Duanwu Yulong. Duanwu Yulong stood in the sky above the ruins of the southern city. He held the golden thick earth ruler and waved it towards the ruins below. Suddenly, countless rays of dark yellow light poured into the ruins and quickly melted the earth and rocks, smoothing out the ravines and holes on the ground. With the passage of time, the ruins of the southern city disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. The devastated earth also quickly returned to normal. In the process of cleaning up the ruins, the four also rescued many people who were buried in the ruins. Those rescued people were naturally grateful to the four of them. At the same time, Di Jianqing and Yu Zhengfei were also doing different things. After Di Jianqing inquired about the news of the mighty miracle god, he flew on his sword and left the giant miracle city. He rushed to the temple outside the city to investigate the clues. Yu Zhengfei used a special method and his own powerful commanding ability to gather more than 1,000 martial artists to rescue the people in the city and repair the roads. Although the strength of the more than 1,000 martial artists was very ordinary, there were many people. However, there was strength in numbers. Under Yu Zhengfei's leadership and command, the cultivators also made great contributions to the battle. The 10 contestants all displayed their strengths and used different methods to quickly save the people of the giant miracle city and clean up the ruins in the city. It seemed that at most one more day, the giant miracle city would be stabilized. But at this time, in the sky south of the giant miracle city, a dazzling golden light that blotted out the sky flew over. That dazzling golden light flew above the southern city gate of the giant miracle city and stopped in midair. Swoosh! With a flash of brilliance, it condensed into a golden giant with a height of 100 meters. The giant's body was extremely sturdy, like a violent bear. Its arms were extremely long, almost hanging to the side of its feet. Its palms were also very wide, as if they contained the power to destroy the world. The most unique thing was that in the center of its forehead, there was a golden triangular eye. Its eyes were constantly flashing with electric arcs, as if there were blue thunderbolts jumping and surging. When the tens of thousands of citizens in the city saw the golden giant in the sky, they immediately let out terrified screams and cries of despair. Chapter 585. Although the powerful and violent Cyclops was just standing in the sky overlooking the city below, the entire city was filled with fear. However, the citizens of the city were extremely afraid of it. They were all scared out of their wits. Whether it was the ordinary people, the city guards, or the guards of the city lord's mansion, they all turned around and fled desperately. Countless people screamed in fear and despair. Juling Shen. It's the Juling Shen. That demon is back. Everyone run. It's over. The entire city is going to be destroyed. Everyone is going to die. You guys who are not devout believers, why don't you kneel down and beg for forgiveness from the Juling Shun? The Juling Shin has appeared again. It must be to test our sincerity. Everyone, quickly worship the Juling Shin. It won't punish us anymore. Although most of the people were fleeing in panic. However, there were still many devout believers of the Juling Shin who were kneeling on the ground and kowtowing to the Juling Shin in the sky. These people looked very devout. They were even praying for the Juling Shin's forgiveness. However, after the Juling Shin observed for a moment, it flew to the sky above the West City District. It opened its golden eye and looked down at the buildings and streets below. It opened its huge mouth and let out a dull roar. Then, it waved its pair of wide and huge palms and shot 2 balls of golden light at the towering city wall below. Bang! Bang! In the deafening noise, the 2 balls of golden light hit the thick city wall that was hundreds of meters high. 2 huge holes were blasted in the city wall on the spot. Dense cracks appeared on the city wall, and gravel and dust splashed all over the sky. Half of the wide and huge city gate was also blown down. The huge gravel that fell down filled the moat. The Juling Shun opened its golden eye again and released a bolt of lightning that was as thick as a bucket. It blasted on a straight and wide street. With a loud bang, the 1,000-meter-long bluestone street was suddenly blown to pieces. A huge pit with a radius of hundreds of meters was blasted out on the ground, and spiderweb-like gullies appeared around it. The blue electric light splashed out and swept across a radius of 2 kilometers like a tide. The houses and buildings on both sides of the street were immediately struck by the lightning and violent airwaves. More than half of them collapsed on the spot. Thousands of people who were still hiding in their homes and trembling were killed on the spot by the aftermath of the lightning. Even those who were lucky enough to survive were buried in the ruins, unable to escape. After destroying the main street, Juling Shin opened his single eye and stared at the ruins, silently observing them. A moment later, it waved its palm and shot out a ball of golden light, blasting the houses that had not completely collapsed into pieces. As a result, the area within a radius of 2,000 meters was truly reduced to scorched earth and ruins. Such a terrifying power caused the earth to tremble violently. Half of the giant spirit city was shaking. The hundreds of thousands of commoners in the city were all frightened to the point of insanity. Zhuling Shun ignored the frantically fleeing commoners in the city. His single eye released an invisible spiritual sense, enveloping the ruined area and probing it bit by bit. At this moment, several dazzling lights lit up in the giant spirit city. They flew into the sky like streamers and rushed toward the giant spirit god. Shwa, shwa, shwa. In the blink of an eye, 9 extraordinary figures appeared in front of the giant spirit god. These 9 powerful and imposing young powerhouses were Ji Tianxing, Qianshan Zhenwu, and the others. Qianshan Zhenwu stood in the front and was the closest to the giant spirit god. He was wearing a black cloak and holding a golden heavy sword, exuding a cold, murderous aura. Duanmu Yulong was not to be outdone. He stood side by side with Qianshan Zhenwu, holding a sword and confronting the giant spirit god. Yu Zhengfei, wearing a dragon-patterned armor and holding a coiling dragon spear, stood in the sky beside the giant spirit god. His whole body was surrounded by blood-red clouds, bursting out with soaring fighting spirit. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky on the right side of the giant spirit god. He was wearing a Kenshin battle robe and holding the black dragon sword. He was as mighty and extraordinary as a Kenshin descending to the world. At this moment, among the 10 participants, except for Di Jianqing, who was still outside the city, the other 9 had gathered to face the giant spirit god together. The giant spirit god seemed to feel the threat. He no longer stared at the city below, but sized up the 9 geniuses in the sky with his golden eye. He opened his mouth and let out a few angry roars, as if he was scolding everyone, but also as if he was angrily complaining about something. Unfortunately, no one could understand his giant language. Qianshan Zhenwu stared at the giant spirit god indifferently and shouted with a murderous aura, "Giant spirit god! You are the guardian of the giant spirit god city in vain. How dare you slaughter your devout believers? You are no different from a demon. I will kill you today to get rid of evil for the people and for Tianxing." As soon as he finished speaking, Qianshan Zhenwu clenched the heavy sword in his hand and was about to unleash his full power to perform a killer move. However, Duanmu Yulong was determined to steal his limelight. Before he could attack, Duanmu Yulong charged at the giant spirit god like lightning and slashed out 3 huge sword lights that could split heaven and earth. Prepare to die, demon. Everyone must remember that Duanmu Yulong is the one who slays demons and protects the people. As his angry roar resounded, 3 dazzling golden sword lights that were 10 feet long instantly shrouded the giant spirit god's figure. The 3 sword lights were about to hit the giant spirit god. However, the giant spirit god's body emitted a dazzling golden light. His figure flashed and teleported thousands of meters away, easily dodging the 3 sword lights. With a flash of golden light, the giant spirit god teleported thousands of meters away and appeared beside Duanmu Yulong. He had already raised his wide left palm and slapped at Duanmu Yulong. Shit! Duanmu Yulong knew that something was wrong and was immediately on alert. However, before he could dodge or escape, he was hit by the giant golden palm and was sent flying back. Duanmu Yulong was like a sharp arrow that pierced through the sky and flew thousands of meters away before crashing into a palace. The incomparably powerful impact caused half of the palace to collapse, causing debris and dust to fly all over the sky. When Duanmu Yulong crawled out of the ruins, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as paper and he looked extremely miserable. Just a moment ago, he had confidently attacked the giant spirit god and shouted those confident and arrogant words. At this moment, he was sent flying by the giant spirit god's slap. He looked miserable and had suffered serious injuries. This was too humiliating and too ironic. Duanmu Yulong flew out of the ruins and quickly suppressed his injuries. He no longer dared to attack recklessly. Qianshan Zhenwu and the other elites were shocked when they saw Duanmu Yulong being sent flying by the giant spirit god Slap. They couldn't believe it. Oh my god! The giant spirit god is so powerful? Duanmu Yulong, who is at Sky Origin Stage Level 6, couldn't even dodge the giant spirit god Slap. How powerful is the giant spirit god? Chapter 586. The slap of the Juling Shen shocked everyone. All the elites realized that the Juling Shen was too powerful and they could not underestimate him. Ji Tianxing looked at Juling Shen with a solemn expression. He silently speculated in his heart, what realm has this Juling Shen reached? Is he in the soul refining stage? But he is still using spiritual sense, not the mysterious and invisible power of the divine soul. He should not have reached the soul refining stage, but the Tianyuan stage. But he could easily slap Duanmu Yulong away. He must have reached LV9 of the Tianyuan stage, or even half a step into the soul refining stage. At this time, Qianshan Zhenwu shouted coldly, everyone, the Juling Shen is at least half a step into the soul refining stage. It is really difficult to deal with him. We can't underestimate him, but we can't retreat in fear. We have to work together to defeat him and protect the people of the Juling Shen city. Even though Qianshan Zhenwu was the strongest at LV7 of the Tianyuan stage, he could only work together to defeat the Juling Shen. He did not dare to say that he could kill the Juling Shen. When he finished his words, he took the lead to attack. He waved his golden sword and rushed to the Juling Shen. Fiery 5-Dragon Slash. Qianshan Zhenwu used all his strength and slashed out 500-meter-long fiery dragons toward the Juling Shen. The 5 fiery dragons cut through the sky and covered the Juling Shen with the power to destroy the world. Suddenly, the area within a radius of 10 miles was covered by fire. The air became extremely hot. Qianshan Zhenwu's killing move was enough to flatten a mountain. It was powerful enough to threaten the Juling Shen. The Juling Shen saw that he could not escape. He roared and his body shone with dazzling golden light. It condensed into a huge shield to protect himself. It even waved its pair of gigantic palms and ruthlessly shot out a few golden balls of light towards the 5 Inferno Divine Dragons. Bang bang bang. The huge golden light balls collided with the fiery dragons. There was a deafening muffled sound. Golden light and flames burst forth, turning into a violent and blazing shockwave that spread out in all directions. The city walls and ruins below were also shattered by the blast wave, stirring up smoke and fog. 3 of the 5 Inferno Divine Dragons were shattered on the spot. The remaining 2 struck the mighty Miracle God, but were blocked by its shield. Juling Shen's shield was indestructible. It actually shattered the 2 Flame Divine Dragons, and there wasn't a single crack. Of course, Juling Shen was also sent flying by the violent and peerless force, crashing into the ruins of the city wall thousands of meters away. At the same time, Ji Tianxing and the other Sky Prides launched their attacks. Everyone unleashed their powerful killer moves, besieging Juling Shen from all directions. Flying Emperor Consecutive Slash. Qingyun Domineering Saber. 10 Ultimate Berserker Spear. Star Attraction Technique. The Heavenly Prides displayed their strengths and unleashed an overwhelming amount of sword shadows and saber lights. Ji Tianxing also brazenly drew his sword and slashed out an ice-blue divine dragon, ruthlessly attacking Juling Shen. 9 Heaven's Dragon Soars. The 30-meter-long ice-blue divine dragon slammed into the Juling God with a force that could destroy everything. Suddenly, the sky within a radius of 10 miles was filled with colorful true essence brilliance. The dazzling spiritual light in the sky erupted with a violent and raging force, forming a wave of shock waves that rippled out in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. The loud noises were incessant, reverberating fiercely in the sky above Juling City. The earth-shattering power scared the hundreds of thousands of people in the city. They desperately retreated into the distance for fear of being affected by this battle. Juling Shen endured the joint attacks of everyone and was beaten back repeatedly, constantly letting out angry roars. The golden light shield condensed around its body was constantly trembling under the attacks of the sword shadows and saber lights, and countless cracks appeared on it. Finally, Julingshan was completely enraged, roaring repeatedly and entering a berserk state. Relying on its powerful defense, Julingshan ignored the sword shadows and saber lights in the sky and rushed toward one of the sky prides as fast as lightning, waving its giant palm fiercely. Boom! In the muffled sound, the Crown Prince Yifan was sent flying by Julingshan's palm, spitting out blood as he flew backward. Lu Ziyuan and Lu Zikong hurriedly slashed out huge sword and saber lights to save Yifan, but it was too late. The extremely violent Julingshan waved a pair of giant palms to shatter the sword and saber lights, and pounced toward the two of them. Lu Ziyuan and Lu Zikong were frightened and immediately retreated, not daring to tangle with Julingshan. However, they were too slow to dodge Julingshan's attack. Boom! Another muffled sound burst out, and Lu Zikong was also sent flying by Julingshan's slap, smashing into the ruins 1,000 meters away with blood flowing out of his 7 orifices. Then, Lu Ziyuan was not spared either. After being caught by Julingshan, Julingshan grabbed him in its giant palm and slammed him to the ground below. The ground that was full of ruins was suddenly smashed into a 100-meter-wide deep pit. Lu Ziyuan was lying in the big pit, covered with wounds all over his body. Dark red blood kept gushing out, and it was obvious that he was seriously injured. In the blink of an eye, Julingshan had injured 3 emperors consecutively. The other elites witnessed this scene with their own eyes, and they were all stunned. Deep fear and doubt arose in their hearts. This Julingshan is actually so powerful? It's over. None of us is its match. How can we defeat it? How can we resolve the crisis of Julingshan? This is not the way to go. If we continue fighting for a while, we will be seriously injured by Julingshan. Why would the imperial court arrange such a test for us? We are no match for Julingshan at all. Next, Julingshan was like a ferocious tiger in a flock of sheep, valiantly charging forward and chasing after the elites. It charged forward and scrupulously, and constantly sent one elite after another flying. Julingshan rampaged in the sky, and no one could stop it at all. At this time, Ji Tianxing took advantage of the fact that Julingshan was chasing after one of the elites to use his trump card. Sword of Judgment. He released the sword embryo in his body, which turned into a huge golden sword that was 30 meters long. The dazzling golden flames seemed to have added a pair of wings to the huge sword. The Sword of Judgment carried the power to pierce through everything and charge toward Julingshan. Boom! In the deafening loud noise, the Sword of Judgment ruthlessly stabbed Julingshan's back. Suddenly, Julingshan's golden light shield was penetrated, and a huge bloody hole was left on his back, with golden blood splattering out. That wound was not fatal, and the injury was relatively light. However, everyone had been fighting with Julingshan for so long, and this was the first time Julingshan had been injured. Seeing this scene, the elites were stunned, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Julingshan immediately abandoned his target and turned to look at Ji Tianxing, letting out a furious roar. In its fury, it opened its golden eye without hesitation and released a bolt of blue lightning. Kaboom! Chapter 587. No one doubted that the power of the blue lightning released by the mighty miracle god was absolutely terrifying. Even a 1,000-foot mountain would crumble instantly under the violent lightning, turning into ruins and dust. Of the 9 prodigies present, no matter who was struck by the blue lightning, they would either die or be severely injured. When the crowd saw the blue lightning bolts heading towards Ji Tianxing, they stared at him with wide eyes to see if he could escape this calamity. Ji Tianxing's aura was locked on by the blue lightning and there was nowhere to hide. No matter where he ran, he would definitely be hit by the blue lightning. Moreover, his speed of escape was definitely not comparable to the speed of the lightning. At this critical moment, he was still calm and did not panic. Wings of the Golden Rock. He did not hesitate to close his wings to protect himself. In the next moment, the destructive blue lightning bolts struck him fiercely. Kaboom! A deafening sound burst out, shaking the sky and shaking the earth for dozens of miles. The lightning beam hit the golden wings and sent Ji Tianxing flying back, crashing into the broken city wall 1,000 meters away. The broken city wall that had not collapsed was smashed into pieces, sending smoke and dust into the air. The lightning beam also collapsed, turning into thousands of blue lightning arcs that spread in all directions, immediately covering the sky for a radius of 10 miles. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others had not yet recovered from the shock, and they did not know whether Ji Tianxing was dead or alive when they were enveloped by the overwhelming lightning arcs. Amidst the crackling sounds of thunder, several prodigies were struck by lightning, their faces black and their heads black. They fled in all directions. Even though everyone's martial arts were profound and they were able to block the bombardment of the lightning and were not injured, they still looked very miserable. At this moment, Ji Tianxing emerged from the rubble and flew back into the sky unscathed. Seeing this scene, the geniuses were even more shocked, and their expressions became more and more interesting. Ji Tianxing, who was struck by the blue lightning, was fine, but they were very miserable. This was simply unbelievable. Duanmu Yulong and the others were both shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. In their hearts, they were faintly ashamed and resentful. However, Zhu Shen roared and rushed over again, waving his giant palm at the prodigies. Everyone hurriedly dealt with Zhu Shen, joining forces to launch a siege. At this point, apart from Ji Tianxing, the other 8 heavenly legends had all suffered injuries of varying degrees. Everyone no longer fought with Zhu Shen head-on. Instead, they chose to use a roundabout tactic to constantly restrain and harass him. Although Zhu Shen was strong, he was no match for the 9 prodigies. After 100 breaths of time, the battle gradually stabilized. Ji Tianxing and the other 8 prodigies circled around Zhu Shen in the sky and finally managed to tie him down. The Zhu Shen continued to charge and unleash all sorts of destructive moves. However, he was unable to kill any of the prodigies. All he did was cause everyone's injuries to worsen. However, as its strength continued to weaken, more and more wounds appeared on its body, and its injuries became more and more serious. Finally, after a quarter of an hour, everyone fought from the sky above the giant holy city to the sky above the wilderness outside the city. Zhu Shen seemed to have lost his patience and also had thoughts of retreating. He found an opportunity to use both of his palms to send 2 prodigies flying. A gap suddenly appeared in the encirclement formed by the 9 prodigies. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Zhu Shen turned into a golden stream of light and flew out through the gap. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the rest immediately launched a pursuit, wanting to kill Zhu Shen in one go. However, Zhu Shen's speed was too fast. In the blink of an eye, he left everyone far behind and disappeared into the horizon. Everyone chased for a while. Seeing that Zhu Shen had disappeared without a trace, they could only stop helplessly. Qianshan Zhenwu said in a dignified tone, "Zhu Shen has escaped far away. We can't catch up. Everyone is injured. Let's return to the city to recuperate first." Duanmu Yulong furrowed his brows tightly. His eyes were fixed on the distant horizon. Filled with unwillingness, he shouted in a low voice, "That damned Zhu Shen, it actually escaped. This time he caught us off guard. If he dares to attack again, he will not be able to return." Subsequently, all the prodigies returned to Giant Holy City. The hundreds of thousands of people in the city had been in fear and despair. Everyone thought that Zhu Shen was going to destroy the entire city. They had nowhere to run and would definitely die in this disaster. In particular, the scene of the 9 prodigies fighting with Zhu Shen made the people see how powerful and invincible Zhu Shen was. Many people had the idea of abandoning the city and escaping, even if they had to give up their homes, just to save their lives. However, when the people saw the 9 prodigies return to Giant Holy City, they immediately breathed a sigh of relief and revealed a grateful expression of surviving a disaster. Duanmu Yulong knew that Qianshan Zhenwu would definitely announce the result to appease the people in the city. Therefore, he took the initiative to strike first. He flew above the square in the city and said in a loud voice, "Everyone, don't worry. The evil Zhu Shen has been repelled by us. Zhu Shen is seriously injured and will not dare to attack again in the short term. Everyone stay in the city at ease, heal your injuries, and rebuild your homes. We will soon completely eliminate Zhu Shen." When the people in the city heard Duanmu Yulong's words, They cheered as if relieved of a heavy burden and bowed to the 9 prodigies in the sky. In the eyes of many people, these 9 prodigies were the great heroes who had saved Giant Holy City, the saviors of the world. Duanmu Yulong, who had spoken, was naturally regarded as the leader of the prodigies and was deeply grateful to him. Duanmu Yulong enjoyed the worship of the people and listened to the cheers of the people in the city, revealing a satisfied smile. Qianshan Zhenwu's eyes were a little gloomy. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and his fists secretly clenched in his sleeves. But now that things had come to this, he couldn't say anything more. He could only fly back to the city lord's mansion with the other 2 prodigies to heal their injuries. Duanmu Yulong and the other prodigies also landed in the city to heal their injuries and restore their vitality. Compared to the 8 prodigies who were in a sorry state, Ji Tianxing was not injured and did not consume much of his true essence, so he did not need to rest. He landed on the square in the city and continued to reinforce the green wood life-nurturing array, enhance the power of the Wood Emperor umbrella, and heal the injuries of the people. Nearly 10,000 people gathered in the square were very respectful and worshipped him as if he was a god. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing communicated with the people and inquired about Zhuling Shen from them. As long as it was related to Zhuling Shen, even if it was a legend from 100 or 200 years ago, he would not miss it. This was because he found that Zhuling Shen's behavior was a little strange. There must be something fishy about it. When Zhuling Shen invaded Giant Holy City, he did not wantonly slaughter the people and only destroyed the buildings. Chapter 588. Since Ji Tianxing came to Giant Holy City, he had been silently observing the situation. He was not famous, and his status was not as good as the other geniuses. Moreover, he did not want to be in the limelight like Qianshan Zhenwu and Duanmu Yulong to win the respect and awe of everyone. The other geniuses did not pay much attention to him, treating him as a dispensable existence. Therefore, he rarely took the initiative to say anything, but secretly observed the situation and carefully investigated the clues. When the giant Holy Spirit God attacked, he carefully observed the behavior of the giant Holy Spirit God and came to this conclusion. With the strength of our contestants, it is impossible to defeat the giant Holy Spirit God, let alone kill it. If we want to resolve the crisis of Giant Holy City and save the people in the city, we must not rely on force and fighting. We must think of other ways. This was the conclusion of Ji Tianxing's careful analysis. Because of this, he decided to investigate the clues in depth and learn more about the giant Holy Spirit God. Many people were very grateful and respectful to him. Of course, they would answer all his questions and tell him everything they knew. Soon night fell. Ji Tianxing inquired about the news and clues from the injured people, especially the older people, who were his main subjects of inquiry. After all, the elders knew more legends and stories. Unknowingly, a night passed. After a night of inquiry and investigation, Ji Tianxing's understanding of the giant Holy Spirit God and giant Holy City had reached an extremely detailed level. After dawn, he left the giant Holy City alone and flew south as fast as lightning. According to the news he learned from the people, there was a majestic temple on Nightless Mountain, 100 miles south of Giant Holy City, which was used to worship the giant Holy Spirit God. The temple was built 200 years ago. It took tens of thousands of people a few months to build it. It was very sacred and majestic. The believers of Giant Holy City went to the temple on Nightless Mountain to worship the giant Holy Spirit God and offer incense every month. Ji Tianxing rushed to Nightless Mountain in the south to see if he could find any clues in the temple. Of course, in addition to the sacred and majestic temple, there was a smaller temple in the east of Giant Holy City. That small temple was the earliest temple built by the people after the Giant Holy City was built. It had a history of more than 100 years. In those 100 years, the temple became more and more ancient and dilapidated. After more than a dozen renovations, it finally could not bear the burden and became dilapidated. Moreover, the ancient temple was too small and could not accommodate the worship of the mighty miracle God. Therefore, the people of the giant Holy City abandoned the small temple and built a new golden temple on the Nightless Mountain in the south of the city. Now, most people only knew about the temple on Nightless Mountain. Very few people knew that in the depths of the mountains to the east of the city, there was a small temple that had been abandoned for nearly 200 years. Ji Tianxing flew above the wasteland and looked around, sizing up the surroundings. At the end of the dark brown wasteland was an undulating mountain range. Those mountain ranges were also dark brown in color. They looked extremely desolate and cold, without any green forests or vegetation. Ji Tianxing asked the old people in the city last night. About a few decades ago, the mountains around the giant holy city were still dark green and covered with lush jungles. But in recent decades, the mountains around the giant holy city had gradually changed, and the jungles and vegetation had become sparser. Even the countless fertile fields and agricultural lands outside the city could no longer grow crops. Often, there was no harvest. Until 2 years ago, there was almost no greenery in those mountains, and the whole place had become a barren land. Ji Tianxing looked at the barren mountain in front of him and secretly thought, those people were right. The mountains outside the city are completely barren, and the former grassland has become a wasteland. It seems that there must be a problem with the heaven and earth aura around the giant holy city. Just as he was thinking about this matter, a dazzling streamer suddenly appeared in the sky in front of him. The colorful streamer came from the depths of the barren mountain range and flew toward Ji Tianxing. It seemed to be going to the giant holy city. Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and stared at the streamer. After a while, he saw clearly that there was a figure in the streamer. It was a young man. When he got closer, he recognized that the man was Di Jianqing. Di Jianqing was wearing a silver star-patterned robe and stepping on a 3-meter-long cloud scar ancient sword. His whole body was blooming with colorful spiritual light, and he flew across the sky. Compared with ordinary sky origin stage experts who condensed wings with genuine essence to fly in the sky, Di Jianqing's posture was really like an immortal. When Ji Tianxing saw Di Jianqing also saw him. Di Jianqing took the initiative to fly toward him and stopped 100 meters in front of him. Prince Tianxing, how is the situation in the giant holy city? Di Jianqing cupped his hands and greeted him. Ji Tianxing also stopped in the sky and said calmly, last evening, the other 8 participants and I were helping the people in the city when the giant holy spirit suddenly attacked. The 9 of us joined forces to fight the giant holy spirit god and finally repelled him. However, everyone was seriously injured and is recuperating in the city. By the way, where did Brother Di go before? Did you go to the temple? Ji Tianxing knew that Di Jianqing must be doing something when he did not appear for a night. At this time, Di Jianqing flew in from the south, so he guessed that Di Jianqing most likely went to the temple. Sure enough, Di Jianqing nodded with a smile and said in a gratified tone, yes, I did go to the temple to investigate the clues. Since the 9 of you joined forces and failed to defeat the giant holy spirit god, it seems that the clues I found are correct. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, what clues did Brother Di find? Di Jianqing showed a smile and said in a playful tone, what? I still have a few speculations that have not been confirmed. When I confirm the results, I will find a suitable time to announce it. By the way, you look like you are in a hurry. Are you also going to the temple to investigate the clues? Ji Tianxing could see that Di Jianqing's words were an excuse. Obviously, he did not want to tell him the truth. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with Di Jianqing and said expressionlessly, so what? Di Jianqing said with a smile, then I'm afraid you have made a wasted trip. I have been busy in the temple all night and have already turned the temple inside out. As long as there are any valuable clues, they're all with me. Ji Tianxing frowned and glanced at him coldly. Di Jianqing ignored his reaction and said with a smile, if Prince Tianxing is worried, you can go and investigate again. I still have something to do, so I will take my leave first. After saying that, Di Jianqing rode the cloud scar ancient sword and turned into a stream of light and flew toward the giant holy city. Chapter 589. Ji Tianxing did not doubt Di Jianqing's words. Di Jianqing had been busy all night. He must have turned over the temple of the Nightless Mountain. Even if he rushed over now, he would not be able to find any clues. In that case, he simply did not go to the Nightless Mountain. Instead, he went to the mountains east of the city to look for the abandoned small temple. Ji Tianxing knew that the small temple had been abandoned for 200 years. It was hard to say whether it existed, let alone find any clues. However, he had no better way and choice. He could only try his best. Swish! Ji Tianxing flew across the sky. His figure quickly disappeared into the sky and entered the mountains east of the city. He crossed over 9 mountain ranges and flew for 90 miles before stopping. According to the old man last night, the oldest temple is in the mountains 100 miles away from the giant holy city. It's exactly 100 miles away from the giant holy city. The abandoned small temple should be nearby. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky, looking down at the mountains and earth below. His eyes searched keenly. He saw that the surrounding mountains were dark brown. All he could see were brown soil and black rocks. The rising sun sprinkled golden sunlight and reflected in the mountains. It finally brought a little warmth to the cold and desolate mountains. Ji Tianxing looked around and searched the 9 mountain peaks, but he couldn't find a single divine temple. He couldn't even find a single house. That small temple has been abandoned for 200 years. Perhaps it has already become a ruin. With this thought in mind, he began to search even more carefully and checked again. But he still found nothing. Not only did he not find the temple building, but he also did not find a broken wall or a worn-out tile. This made him a little embarrassed. He immediately frowned. It shouldn't be. How can I not find any clues? Even if the temple has been abandoned for 200 years, there should at least be a few bricks and some broken tiles left, right? In the surrounding 9 mountains, I can't even find a brick or tile. This is very abnormal. Ji Tianxing whispered. After a moment of silent analysis, he concluded that there was a problem. Thus, he descended from the sky and landed on a 1,000 feet tall mountain. Since he couldn't see the bricks and tiles with his eyes, nor could he find the ruined temple that was abandoned 200 years ago, he used his telegnosis ability to investigate the situation. To a heaven origin stage cultivator, spiritual sense was more convenient than eyes. The eyes were only suitable for seeing things on the ground and in the sky, but the soul sense could penetrate the earth, water, and other obstacles. Normal cultivators at the 3rd level of sky origin stage could only reach 300 meters deep with their spiritual senses. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, had the nirvana divine crystal in his mind. His spiritual sense was even more powerful, allowing him to probe up to 500 meters underground. He released his invisible spiritual sense and silently probed the situation on the mountain peak. Very soon, the soil, rock layers, and all kinds of messy things under the ground appeared clearly in his mind. His spiritual sense continued to extend underground, and it didn't take long for it to reach its limit, allowing him to explore the interior of the mountain. Unfortunately, the mountain peak under his feet was very ordinary, and he couldn't find anything related to the temple. Ji Tianxing excluded this mountain peak and flew to another mountain peak, continuing to explore with his spiritual sense. The second mountain also had no clues related to the temple. Next, he explored the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th mountain peaks. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianxing explored 6 mountains in a row, but still didn't find any clues. His spiritual sense had consumed a lot of energy, and his mind was a bit tired. He flew to the 7th mountain peak and released his spiritual sense to explore the underground. However, when his spiritual sense reached the underground, it immediately felt like it had fallen into a thick fog. His spiritual sense actually became blurry and hazy, and he couldn't see anything clearly. All he could see was a vast expanse of whiteness. This is the power of an array. There is an array on this mountain that can block my spiritual sense. Ji Tianxing's eyes lit up, and he immediately realized that there was something wrong with this mountain peak. So, he concentrated on controlling his spiritual sense to explore the invisible array bit by bit. After about 15 minutes, he found out that there was a heaven origin stage illusory array on this mountain peak. The illusory array could create illusions to cover the true appearance of the mountain peak, making this mountain as barren and unremarkable as the other mountain peaks. Humph! It actually used an illusory array to cover the true appearance of the mountain peak. It seems that this is the place I'm looking for. Ji Tianxing murmured in a low voice, and then he used all his strength to perform his array skills to break the heaven origin illusory array. This process was very long and time-consuming, but he had enough patience. 4 hours later, it was noon, and Ji Tianxing finally broke the illusory array and successfully closed it. Swoosh! On the empty mountain peak, a white light suddenly flashed. After the heaven origin illusory array closed, the mountain peak revealed its true appearance. On the barren mountain peak, an old and dilapidated palace and house with a radius of 200 square meters appeared out of thin air. Although the palace and house were very old and dilapidated, most of the walls and roofs had collapsed and become ruins of bricks and stones. But Ji Tianxing could still see that this was once a small temple, and it was the oldest giant miracle temple. It's really here. A smile flashed across his eyes, and he thought to himself, I thought that after 200 to 300 years of wind and rain, this temple would have turned into ruins. I didn't expect that with the protection of the heaven origin illusory array, the temple could be preserved until now, and I can still see its original appearance. He used his spiritual senses to check and found that this temple was no longer protected by the array, but it was filled with dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth. There was an open space in front of the temple, and it was once the place where the believers worshipped incense. In the dilapidated main hall of the temple, the statue of the giant miracle god was enshrined. As for the house behind the temple, the dozens of houses were for the temple's abbot and believers to live in. Ji Tianxing stepped across the open space and entered the main hall of the temple. After looking around for a while, he found some ancient artifacts. He put those broken artifacts into his spatial ring, and he would study them slowly in the future. Then he walked through the main hall of the temple and entered the house behind it. As soon as he stepped into the dusty house, his attention was attracted by a big tree in the corner of the yard. It was a nameless old willow-like tree that was more than 100 feet tall, and it seemed to be at least 300 to 400 years old. But this tree was still green and lush, and thousands of green branches hung down from the top of the tree. The plains and mountains around the giant miracle city were barren places where not even a blade of grass grew. But in this house that had been abandoned for 200 years, there was a big green tree. How could Ji Tianxing not be surprised? In the empty house, there were only 2 things in addition to the dust and the ruins of bricks and stones. One was the statue of the giant miracle god standing in the middle of the yard, which was 30 meters tall and majestic. Chapter 590. Ji Tianxing walked quickly to the corner of the yard and came to the nameless ancient tree. He looked at the nameless ancient tree from a close distance and immediately noticed that there was something strange about the ancient tree. The ancient tree was not withered at all. Instead, it was green and lush, exuding a majestic greenwood vitality. Moreover, the ancient tree also contained an amazing power, which was very mysterious and hidden. If Ji Tianxing had not reached the Tianyuan stage, he would not have noticed the abnormality of the ancient tree. He frowned and showed a puzzled look. It's incredible that an ancient tree that has lived for 300 or 400 years can still be full of vitality with green leaves and branches. It seems that the greenwood spiritual chi within 100 miles has been swallowed by this ancient tree. No wonder there is a majestic power accumulated in the ancient tree, which is comparable to a top Tianyuan stage powerhouse. No wonder the area within 100 miles around the giant holy city has become barren and barren. Ji Tianxing analyzed for a moment and saw the strangeness of the ancient tree. He guessed the reason for the change of the giant holy city. After hesitating for a moment, he released his spiritual sense to explore the ancient tree to see the situation inside the ancient tree. He also wanted to figure out what the mysterious and powerful power in the ancient tree was. However, as soon as his spiritual sense touched the ancient tree, it was directly retracted by an invisible and powerful force. Buzz! A muffled sound burst out. Ji Tianxing's spiritual sense trembled on the spot. His consciousness was blurred and his eyes turned black. He was about to pass out. That invisible force was so powerful that it was several times more powerful than his spiritual sense. He could not help but step back a few steps before he could stand firm. He shook his dizzy head. under the protection of the Nirvana divine crystal, his spiritual sense quickly recovered its clarity. This ancient tree not only has a terrifying power, but also has self-consciousness? Ji Tianxing's face was filled with shock as he stared at the ancient tree in disbelief. Could it be that this ancient tree has cultivated into a spirit and become a tree demon at the Demon King level? Realizing this, he quickly took out the black dragon sword and held it in his hand. However, the ancient tree was extremely calm. It did not release any mysterious power, nor did it take the initiative to attack. Ji Tianxing tested it a few times and understood that the ancient tree was not a tree demon. It would not take the initiative to attack and would only passively defend itself. Although the ancient tree won't attack me, I can't check its situation either. What should I do? He stared at the ancient tree and frowned, deep in thought. After it quieted down, he could hear faint sounds coming from the ancient tree. Peng, peng, peng. The muffled sounds were very rhythmic, just like the beating of a human heart. This discovery made Ji Tianxing reveal a strange expression. He muttered in a low voice, "This ancient tree actually has a heartbeat?" Ji Tianxing felt incredulous. However, after listening carefully for a long time, he had to admit that there was indeed a heartbeat coming from the ancient tree. Although he was full of doubts, he could not use his spiritual sense to probe the situation inside the ancient tree. He could only guess secretly. Therefore, he shifted his gaze to the giant miracle idol in the middle of the courtyard. After observing for a moment, he found that it was not an ordinary idol. It also contained a mysterious and powerful force, as if it had a consciousness. The giant miracle idol and the ancient tree in the corner of the courtyard were invisibly connected. With a mysterious and powerful force as the foundation, they formed a subtle connection. Ji Tianxing patiently investigated and studied for a long time. Finally, he found out that the ancient tree was connected to the ancient divine statue. The mysterious and powerful force circulated between the ancient tree and the idol. It not only nourished the ancient tree, but also protected the giant miracle idol. A centuries-old ancient tree is actually connected to an idol? Such a strange thing is simply unheard of. Ji Tianxing was sure that the disasters and changes of the giant miracle idol and the strange behavior of the giant miracle idol could be found clues from the ancient tree and the idol. If he could find out the ancient tree and the idol, perhaps he could know the secret of the giant miracle idol and resolve the disaster of the giant miracle idol. However, when he used his spiritual sense to explore the idol, he couldn't see the situation inside the idol. His spiritual sense was repelled by the mysterious force. His whole body flew 10 meters away and almost fell in the courtyard. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to rest for a while. After he recovered his consciousness, he left the dilapidated temple. This temple is very strange. It must contain important clues. Unfortunately, I can't touch the ancient tree and the idol. I can only find a way later. He decided to activate the Tianyuan illusory array to hide the ancient temple. When he returned to the city to find out more clues, he would find a way to investigate the temple. Swish! Ji Tianxing waved his palm and released countless true essence brilliance. He used the array's loss technique to restart the Tianyuan illusory array. A white light flashed and covered the whole mountain peak. Suddenly, the palace, the courtyard, the ancient tree and the idol disappeared. The mountain peak became a dark brown open space without any grass. Ji Tianxing turned and left the mountain peak and flew back to the giant miracle idol. When he returned to the giant miracle idol, he found that the 9 contestants had comforted the people in the city. Everyone was trying to find a way to command the people to rebuild their homes. Qianshan Jinwu, as the lord of the giant miracle idol, issued orders quickly and decisively. He commanded 2 talents, hundreds of guards and thousands of city guards. Duan Muyulong also tried his best to show off. He joined forces with the 3 princes to help the people clean up the ruins and rebuild their houses and residences. Moreover, he always wanted to take the initiative to steal Qianshan Jinwu's limelight. Yu Jingfei was also busy. He led more than 2,000 warriors he recruited to deal with the aftermath in the city. Di Jianqing was still nowhere to be seen. It seemed that he was still investigating. Ji Tianxing returned to the square in the city and continued to treat the injured people. He also investigated the dilapidated temple in the east of the city. Soon, a whole day passed. With the management and help of the talents, the situation in the giant miracle idol was stabilized. Hundreds of thousands of people used them as their backbone. They were no longer afraid and desperate. They actively and orderly rebuilt their homes. That night, Qianshan Jinwu summoned everyone to the city lord's mansion to report clues and information to each other and discuss the next plan. Ji Tianxing and the other contestants went to the city lord's mansion. Duanmu Yulong didn't want to go, but he had to go in when he saw everyone enter the city lord's mansion. Qianshan Jinwu sat in the main seat in the city lord's mansion's conference hall. Seeing that everyone was there, he said in a dignified tone, "Everyone, the people in the giant miracle idol have been comforted and the situation has stabilized. However, if we can't kill the giant miracle idol will not be peaceful and the crisis will not be resolved. However, the giant miracle idol is too strong. We can't kill it. We have to find another way. I know that you have investigated a lot of clues and information." Chapter 591. Although Qianshan Jinwu acted like he was in charge, which made several participants a little disgusted. But in the current situation, what he said was what everyone thought, and it was undoubtedly the best solution. Qianshan Jinwu looked around and saw that everyone was silent. No one spoke first. So he said, "Since everyone is so modest, I will first throw a brick to attract jade and tell you what I know. Giant Holy City was built more than 300 years ago. At that time, it was just a small town. There were many demons and ghosts in the surrounding mountains." Qianshan Jinwu began to talk about the origin of Giant Holy City and the reason why the people worshipped the Giant Holy Spirit. Everyone had heard this news. They could ask a few people about it. After Qianshan Jinwu finished speaking, the contestants looked at each other, hesitating whether or not they should tell him the information they had. Only Di Jianqing showed a confident look. He said with a smile, "Since you haven't found any more clues, I will announce the news I found. Previously, when you were resisting the giant Holy Spirit in the city, I had already gone to the Nightless Mountain 100 miles south of the city to investigate the giant Holy Spirit temple. I checked the inside and outside of the temple several times. Finally, my efforts paid off. I found a lot of useful clues." Di Jianqing was obviously prepared. When he met Ji Tianxing before, he refused to reveal the news. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to announce the news in front of all the participants. Only in this way could he show his skills and ability. Everyone stared at Di Jianqing, watching as he spoke with a face full of confidence. The so-called giant Holy Spirit is just a powerhouse of a different race. It is a Cyclops in the 9th level of Sky Origin stage. The Cyclops clan is born with the spiritual eye technique. They can control the power of wind, fire, thunder and lightning. The Cyclops we are going to deal with has the thunder spiritual eye and can control thunder and lightning. Naturally, it is worshipped by the people as a god. The Cyclops' strength and defense are extremely strong. It is almost impossible for us to defeat it with our strength. It is also difficult to stop it from destroying Giant Holy City. However, every Cyclops has a fatal weakness. As long as we attack its weakness, we have a chance to kill it. The weakness of the Titan Spirit God was its single eye. I suggest that we work together to arrange the Tianyuan Grand Array. Not only can we protect the people of Giant Spirit City, but we can also use the array to fight against the Giant Spirit God. If the Juling Shen attacks again, we can join forces to besiege it. As long as we can break its eye, we will have a chance to kill it and completely solve the crisis of Giant Holy City. Di Jianqing's long-winded speech had clearly been carefully considered. Not only did he announce the weakness of the mighty miracle god, but he also laid out a plan for everyone. The contestants nodded their heads repeatedly, expressing their agreement. Di Jianqing didn't have any outstanding performance before, but at this moment, he was dazzling and in the limelight. Even Qianshan Jinwu and Duanmu Yulong had to agree with him. Duanmu Yulong said with a solemn expression, "Brother Di really spent a lot of effort. If we can resolve this crisis, Brother Di's contribution will not go unnoticed." I agree with Brother D's suggestion. Next, we need to discuss what kind of great array we should arrange so that we can more effectively stop the giant miracle god. Afterward, Qianshan Zhenwu and the other participants began to discuss what kind of formation they should set up. Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. Several participants reached a consensus and decided to set up 4 great arrays in Giant Holy City to protect the 4 urban areas in the north, south, east, and west. When the 4 great arrays were combined, they could form a super great array to protect the entire Giant Holy City against the invasion of the giant miracle god. However, as soon as everyone finished discussing this matter and before they started to act, there was a sudden burst of panic in the city. The faces of several participants immediately changed. They rushed out of the city lord's mansion and flew into the sky. They saw that there was a huge dazzling golden light suspended in the dark night sky above the North City. The dazzling golden light illuminated half of Giant Holy City and awakened countless people in the city. In the golden light, there was a huge figure up to 100 meters tall. It was undoubtedly the giant miracle god. The people in the city were really stable and relaxed today, but when they suddenly saw the giant miracle god making a comeback, they were suddenly frightened and fled in panic. Ji Tianxing and the other geniuses did not expect that the giant miracle god would take advantage of this time to attack. Duan Muyulong's face was gloomy as he cursed, "Damn the giant miracle god, what a coincidence! Even if it's a day later, at least we can be prepared and set up a few great arrays." Qianshan Zhenwu frowned and shouted in a deep voice, "Now that things have come to this, we can't care so much. Let's join forces to defeat the giant miracle god first." As his voice fell, he flapped a pair of true essence wings and rushed toward the giant miracle god as fast as a stream of light. Ji Tianxing and the other geniuses also flew toward the giant miracle god. But before everyone arrived, the giant miracle god launched an attack. It waved a pair of giant palms and shot out several giant golden blades in a row, destroying the houses and buildings on the ground below. Within a radius of 5 miles, dozens of streets and countless houses and buildings were blasted into smithereens and turned into rubble and ruins. Thousands of people who were still asleep were killed and turned into debris along with the houses and buildings. The dazzling golden light illuminated the night sky, and the loud rumbling sound spread throughout the entire giant miracle city, reverberating in the night sky. The people in the city were awakened, screaming in fear and fleeing in despair. The originally quiet giant miracle city immediately fell into chaos and despair. After the giant miracle god destroyed countless houses and buildings, it looked down at the ruins and released a powerful spiritual sense to carefully explore the ruins, as if it was looking for something. At this time, Ji Tianxing, Qianshan Zhenwu, and the others finally arrived above the ruins and surrounded the giant miracle god. They did not talk nonsense and did not waste time. They directly besieged the giant miracle god. With the previous battle experience, everyone cooperated very well this time. They did not confront the giant miracle god head-on, but took turns to attack and harass. The 10 prodigies all displayed their strengths as they unleashed their killer moves that could destroy the heaven and earth. They unleashed a torrential flood of saber lights and sword shadows that rained down on Julingshin. The dazzling 5-colored brilliance illuminated the night sky within a radius of dozens of miles. The violent and raging energy formed a 5-colored hurricane, twisting the ruins into debris and dust. The two sides had just exchanged a few moves, and the area within a radius of more than 10 miles was razed to the ground. Countless people in the city were killed and injured. The giant miracle god was beaten back again and again, and the battlefield gradually shifted to the top of the North City Gate. Several geniuses were also injured by the giant miracle god, and their appearance became miserable. Chapter 592. The earth-shattering battle caused the entire giant holy city to tremble. Hundreds of thousands of citizens were scared out of their wits as they desperately ran towards the South City District. Ji Tianxing and the 9 Sky Prides had no chance to save the citizens. They could only fight the giant holy spirit god with all their might. Sky-piercing divine sword. Di Jianqing stepped into the night sky as he performed a sword technique with both hands. He injected a vast amount of true yuan into the Cloud Scar Ancient Sword. Suddenly, the Cloud Scar Ancient Sword expanded to 10 meters long and turned into a giant golden sword. It slashed through the night sky towards the giant Holy Spirit God. In everyone's eyes, Di Jianqing's sword technique was like controlling a flying sword. It was definitely powerful enough to destroy the world. Bang! The shining Cloud Scar Ancient Sword stabbed into Julingshan's back, and a muffled sound rang out. However, the Cloud Scar Ancient Sword could not break through the giant Holy Spirit God's defense. It only sent the giant Holy Spirit God flying 100 meters away. The giant Holy Spirit God was enraged. He turned his head and stared at Di Jianqing. His golden eye was filled with surging blue light as he shot out a lightning beam. Kaboom! A lightning beam that was more than 10 meters long and as thick as a bucket instantly tore through the night sky and hit Di Jianqing. Di Jianqing had no time to dodge. He did not even have the chance to block with the Cloud Scar Ancient Sword. He was engulfed by the lightning beam and smashed into the ground below. Boom! In the deafening explosion, a 100-meter-wide crater was formed on the ground. Gravel and dust flew everywhere. Di Jianqing was lying at the bottom of the crater. He was like a piece of charcoal. Black smoke was rising from his body. He did not look like a human at all. Although he was not dead yet, he was severely injured. His combat power was extremely weak. Even so, he still endured his injuries and shouted, "What are you all still standing there for? Attack its weak point. You can only kill it if you break its eye." Ji Tianxing and the rest saw that after the giant Holy Spirit God released the lightning beam with his thunder spirit eyes, his movements were a little sluggish. Everyone immediately realized that Di Jianqing was right. The thunder spirit eyes must be the weakness of the giant Holy Spirit God. It was also the key to defeating it. Therefore, Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others quickly used their strongest killing moves to attack Julingshan's eye. Qianshan Jinwu unleashed his full power. His body swelled violently and turned into a 3-meter-tall giant. His robe fluttered in the wind. 5 Chi's unification. Big Dipper stellar sword. Qianshan Jinwu was like a god of war. He held a 10-meter-long starlight sword with both hands and slashed at Julingshan's forehead. The majestic and mighty genuine Qi stirred up a fierce wind in the sky. The dazzling silver greatsword was like a stream of stars that tore through the night sky and pierced through the golden light ball that Julingshan had shot out. In an instant, Qianshan Jinwu rushed 100 meters away and arrived in front of Julingshan with his sword. Sensing the threat, Julingshan immediately raised a pair of wide palms above his head to block Qianshan Jinwu's sword. Bang! The Big Dipper stellar sword slashed at Julingshan's palms, causing an earth-shattering explosion that shook the sky. Julingshan was smashed to the ground by the powerful force, creating a huge crater in the ground. The ground within a radius of 10 miles burst open and densely packed gullies. However, his palms were not injured. Only the golden light dimmed a lot. Standing in the deep crater, he looked up at Qianshan Jinwu in the sky and roared angrily. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Duanmu Yulong, who had been waiting for a long time, finally launched his attack. He held a golden bow in his left hand and a sword in his right hand as an arrow. He used his full power to shoot a terrifying arrow. Starfall! Duanmu Yulong shouted in a low voice. He pulled the bow to a full moon, causing the sword to turn into a golden streamer and fiercely shot at Julingshan's eye. The 10-meter-long streamer was extremely sharp. It could even penetrate a 1,000-meter-tall mountain in an instant. His secret technique was named Starfall. It implied that even the stars could be shot down. Of course, its power was extraordinary. When the golden streamer shot at Julingshan's eye, several prodigies widened their eyes and stared at the streamer. Everyone was full of anticipation and eager to see the result. Especially Duanmu Yulong, who was full of hope and longing. His heart was in his throat. If his arrow could destroy Julingshan's eye, he would be the greatest contributor and the most dazzling hero in this assessment. However, when the Starfall arrow was about to hit Julingshan's eye, Julingshan had no time to dodge or block. He instantly closed his eye and tilted his head. Bang! Amidst a deafening muffled sound, the starfall arrow struck the Titan spirit god, but it did not pierce its single eye. Instead, it hit its forehead. Zhu Shen was sent flying by the terrifying impact on the spot and fiercely smashed into the edge of the crater. Suddenly, the 100-meter-wide crater doubled in size. Half of Zhuling City was shaken by the impact. A bloody hole was shot in Zhu Shen's forehead. Golden blood spurted out. However, the bloody hole was not deep enough to seriously injure Zhu Shen. Zhu Shen was furious. He reached out and pulled out the sword that pierced his forehead. He violently crushed it. Then, he opened his eye and accumulated a terrifying lightning beam. He fiercely shot it at Duanmu Yulong. Duanmu Yulong was completely dumbfounded. His heart was filled with disbelief and disappointment. He never thought that the arrow that he had prepared for a long time and used all his strength would fail. When the lightning beam shot towards him, he suddenly woke up and subconsciously dodged. Unfortunately, it was too late. He was instantly hit by the lightning beam and flew 1,000 meters away. Plop! Duanmu Yulong smashed into the rubble and turned into a black charcoal. Black smoke curled up from his body. His injuries were similar to Di Jianqing's. His body was bloody and severely injured. His combat strength was weakened to the extreme. Chen Shanzhenwu and the other geniuses saw the outcome of Di Jianqing and Duanmu Yulong. Their faces became very ugly. Some people recalled that Ji Tianxing had also been hit by the lightning beam. However, he had blocked it with his golden wings and was unharmed. At that time, they did not know the power of the lightning beam. Now that they had seen the horror of the lightning beam, they felt that Ji Tianxing was unfathomable. At the same time, Ji Tianxing suddenly released the sword embryo. It turned into a 30-meter-long golden sword and slashed at Zhu Shen. Chen Shanzhenwu and the other geniuses saw that he was charging at Zhu Shen without fear of death. They immediately exclaimed and tried to dissuade him. Ji Tianxing, come back quickly. Don't be rash. If we are defeated one by one, none of us can save Zhuling City. Di Jianqing said that he could break the weakness. That's just a theory. You can't destroy Zhu Shen's spiritual eye. Everyone knew that the lightning spiritual eye was Zhu Shen's weakness. Zhu Shen would definitely guard against it. Di Jianqing's words were just a theory. It was impossible to achieve. Chapter 593. However, no one knew Ji Tianxing's thoughts and true intentions. When Di Jianqing pointed out the Zhu Shen's weakness and made a suggestion, he knew that it was not reliable. Therefore, he used his ultimate move to attack the Zhu Shen, not to attack the Zhu Shen's weakness. He had his own plans and plans. Sword of Judgment. Ji Tianxing let out a low roar as he controlled the 30-meter-long golden greatsword. It burst out with a destructive might as it ruthlessly attacked the Zhuling god. Bam! In the dull noise, the sword of judgment stabbed the Zhu Shen's forehead. Coincidentally, the sword had stabbed into the wound from before. Suddenly, the wound that was pierced by the starfall arrow immediately expanded several times. The wide and deep wound was like a bloody mouth, revealing the white bones inside, and dark red blood was constantly gushing out. The Zhu Shen's injury immediately worsened, and his strength began to weaken. He roared angrily and rushed to Ji Tianxing as fast as a stream of light, waving a pair of giant palms to hit him. Ji Tianxing turned the sword of judgment back into the sword embryo. As soon as he put it back into his body, two broad giant palms attacked him from both sides. The Zhu Shen's palms could smash a mountain into powder. If he was hit, how could he survive? At the critical moment, he closed his golden wings without hesitation to protect himself. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, a pair of gigantic palms slammed down on Ji Tianxing, drowning his figure. All the geniuses suddenly showed a horrified expression, and their mood became extremely complicated. In everyone's opinion, Ji Tianxing was doomed and would definitely be smashed into meat paste. However, after the Zhu Shen released his palms, Ji Tianxing's figure appeared again, and he was intact. At this time, the Zhu Shen grabbed him with his right palm and slammed him to the ground below. Bam! Ji Tianxing smashed heavily into the ground, creating a huge crater in the ground. Dust and gravel flew up into the air. Half of the Julingshan shook, and the ground cracked like a spider web. Ji Tianxing struggled for a while before climbing out of the deep pit and flying back into the sky. He was completely unscathed, and there was not a single wound on his body. Only blood flowed out of his mouth and nose. That was because his internal organs had been injured. However, his flying speed did not decrease in the slightest. Clearly, his injuries were not serious. Qianshan Zhenwu and the other geniuses were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe their eyes. Shua! Ji Tianxing transformed into a golden stream of light and flew into the sky, heading east without hesitation. Julingshan didn't seem to have expected that he would still be alive and kicking after suffering such a heavy blow. It seemed to have felt a great humiliation, and it was so angry that it almost went berserk. Roar! Julingshan raised his head and roared. Golden flames ignited all over his body, and wisps of thunder and lightning curled around him. Its single eye stared fixedly at Ji Tianxing as its body turned into a golden streak of light. It charged at Ji Tianxing as fast as it could and began its pursuit. Ji Tianxing fled desperately. In the blink of an eye, he had flown out of the Julingshan city and continued to fly toward the mountains in the east. Julingshan hated him to the core. No matter what, it wanted to kill him first to vent its anger. It ignored the other 9 geniuses and the people in the city and chased toward the east as fast as lightning. Seeing this scene, the 9 geniuses suddenly revealed complicated expressions and began to discuss. Qianshan Zhenwu frowned and said in a low voice, "Ji Tianxing deliberately injured Julingshan to lure it out of the city?" Yu Zhengfei nodded and said solemnly, "If we continue to fight in the city, the aftermath of the battle will destroy Julingshan city. Ji Tianxing did this to protect the people of Julingshan city, but it's too dangerous for him to do so." Di Jianqing's injuries were very serious. However, at this critical juncture, he had to show a heroic spirit. He said in a low voice, "We can't let him fight alone. Otherwise, he will definitely die. Let's chase after him and besiege Julingshan outside the city." After saying that, the geniuses flew out of Julingshan city to support Ji Tianxing. Only Duanmu Yulong objected. He quickly dissuaded them. Ji Tianxing has a mysterious treasure to protect him. He can withstand the crazy attacks of Julingshan without dying. What can we do if we go? Since Ji Tianxing dares to lure Julingshan away, he must have the corresponding confidence. What we should do now is to pacify the people in the city to prevent chaos in the city. Duanmu Yulong was already seriously injured. Of course, he did not want to fight Julingshan again. Moreover, he was silently praying that Julingshan would kill Ji Tianxing. That way, he would not have to waste more effort. However, Qianshan Zhenwu, Di Jianqing, and Yu Zhengfei refused to listen to his suggestion. They all flew toward the east of Julingshan city. In the blink of an eye, only Duanmu Yulong and the 3 princes were left in the city. The other 5 geniuses had gone to support Ji Tianxing. Duanmu Yulong looked at the figures of everyone flying away and sneered in his heart. "Humph! You idiots better die in the hands of Julingshan together with Ji Tianxing." After that, he brought Lu Zikang, Lu Ziyuan, and Yifan to pacify the people and treat the injured. After Ji Tianxing left Julingshan city, he flew toward the mountains in the east. After he had investigated the abandoned temple, he concluded that the ancient tree and statue in the temple were most likely related to what Julingshan was looking for. Therefore, he decided to lure Julingshan to the abandoned temple to see if he could find any clues. Swoosh! Julingshan's speed was much faster than Ji Tianxing. He quickly caught up with him. Ji Tianxing did not look back. He silently used his spiritual sense to explore the night sky behind him. Seeing that Julingshan was only 300 meters away from him, and the distance was constantly shortening, he was secretly anxious. Julingshan's speed is too fast. I have to find a way to increase my speed. I can't let him catch up with me. His goal was to lure Julingshan to the abandoned temple, not to fight with Julingshan. However, he desperately flapped his golden wings and reached his maximum speed. Still, he could not pull away from Julingshan. Julingshan was only 200 meters away from him. Julingshan's golden eye was accumulating blue lightning and was about to release another lightning beam. At this critical moment, an idea suddenly flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. He recalled the scene of Di Jianqing flying on the sword and suddenly had an idea. He activated the sword embryo in his body and turned it into a 3-meter-long golden sword. Then, he stepped on the giant sword formed by the sword embryo and burst out with vigorous true core strength. He desperately flew forward. Swoosh! The giant golden sword cut through the night sky at an extremely fast speed and flew him into the desolate mountains. In the blink of an eye, the distance between Ji Tianxing and Julingshan was more than 300 meters away. Julingshan's thunder spirit eyes released a lightning beam, but it brushed past Ji Tianxing's shoulder and crashed into a 1,000-foot-tall mountain. Boom! Chapter 594. A real martial arts genius was not only good at understanding things, but also good at learning from others. Ji Tianxing had seen Di Jianqing fly on the sword and was inspired. He had also flown on the sword embryo and managed to escape at the critical moment. However, Di Jianqing flew on the Cloud Scar ancient sword. Although it looked cool, he had trained hard for more than 10 years. However, Ji Tianxing was different. He was not flying on a treasure sword, but his own sword embryo. The sword embryo was a part of his body and was under his control. It was like an extension of his body and would not make any mistakes. Therefore, he succeeded in flying on the sword embryo for the first time and increased his flying speed to the limit. The speed of flying on the sword is as fast as lightning. It is much faster than flying on the wings. However, flying on the sword embryo will consume the energy of the sword embryo quickly. I cannot use this method to travel. I can only use it to escape or avoid attacks at critical moments. Ji Tianxing thought to himself as a hint of a smile flashed across his eyes. After all, he had one more trump card, flying on the sword. Ji Tianxing stopped thinking and turned to look at the night sky behind him. He saw Julingshan still chasing after him. Julingshan roared angrily and increased his speed to the limit. However, he could only maintain a distance of 300 meters and could not catch up. It seems that the speed of flying on the sword embryo is comparable to the speed of a sky origin stage cultivator. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing was a little surprised, but he also felt very gratified. Soon, 15 minutes passed. Ji Tianxing crossed the 9 mountain ranges and flew over 100 miles, arriving at the mountain where the abandoned temple was located. Julingshan also chased after him. He looked like he would not give up until he killed Jian Wushuang. About 20 miles behind Julingshan, there were 5 dazzling lights. They were Qianshan Zhenwu, Yu Zhengfei, and the others. Ji Tianxing landed on the mountain peak. He immediately waved his hand and shot out a few colorful lights into the empty mountain peak. After a few breaths, he closed the sky origin stage formless magic array. Swoosh! A white light flashed on the mountain peak and the scene changed. An ancient temple appeared out of thin air on the originally empty dark brown ground. Several walls of the dilapidated palace had collapsed, and several roofs had caved in. Rubble was piled up between the dilapidated walls, and a thick layer of dust covered the ground. The courtyard behind the palace was also dilapidated. Most of the houses had collapsed, and the ground of the courtyard, which was paved with black stones, was also full of holes and cracks. Only the ancient tree and the ancient statue in the courtyard remained unmoved, exuding an ancient aura. Ji Tianxing stood in the open space in front of the temple and turned to look at the Julingshan in the night sky. Juling God rushed over with a murderous look. Just as he was about to release a thunder beam, he suddenly saw the old temple appear. He was stunned. It stopped in midair and stared at the dilapidated temple with its single eye. There was a hint of doubt and complexity in its eyes. Ji Tianxing was observing it and saw the changes in its eyes. He thought to himself, this abandoned temple is the place where it was worshipped back then. It must remember. However, just as this thought flashed through his mind, the Julingshan had already retracted its gaze from the temple. Julingshan angrily roared. Surging blue electric light accumulated in his single eye and released a thunderbolt beam with a loud rumble. Kaboom! The thunder beam, which was more than 10 meters long, tore through the night sky and smashed down, ruthlessly striking at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was already prepared. He immediately closed his golden wings to protect himself. Boom! The thunder beam struck him ruthlessly, drowning his figure and exploding with an earth-shattering sound. The dazzling blue lightning surged out like a flood, instantly covering the mountain peak and submerging half of the dilapidated temple. The entire mountain peak shook violently and cracked open several wide ravines. Soon it would fall apart. A huge pit was blasted open in the ground, and black scorched earth splattered everywhere. Ji Tianxing lay at the bottom of the pit, buried in the black scorched earth. His golden wings were still shining with a dazzling brilliance. He flapped his wings and shook off the scorched earth buried in his body. His figure flashed and flew into the sky. When he returned to the sky, he saw that half of the temple had been destroyed. The dilapidated ancient palace had disappeared, and the large open space in front of the palace had turned into a deep pit. Only half of the dilapidated courtyard was left on the mountain peak. The courtyard walls and old houses had also been turned into ruins by the violent shockwave. At a glance, the mountain peak was covered in black scorched earth, and thick black smoke was still rising. Only the ancient tree, which was more than 100 feet tall, and the simple and unadorned statue were still standing. Surprisingly, the ancient tree was still green and lush. Its tens of thousands of branches and leaves were unharmed. The statue was also as stable as a rock, without any cracks. The Zhulingshan also realized this. He stared at the statue in the ruins with his single eye and was immediately stunned. Although the ancient statue was modeled with the vicissitudes of life, it could be clearly recognized that it was exactly the same as the Zhulingshan. Moreover, there was an invisible close connection between the Zhulingshan and the statue, as if they were one. The Zhulingshan seemed to be lost in thought. He stopped in midair and stared at the statue and the ancient tree, temporarily stopping his attack. Ji Tianxing did not take the opportunity to attack. He pointed at the statue and the ancient tree and said to the Zhulingshan, "Zhulingshan, I can see that your original intention is not to destroy the giant holy city, nor to slaughter your believers. You seem to be looking for something. Maybe you don't understand what I'm saying, but you should be able to sense that the statue and the ancient tree may be what you're looking for." The Zhulingshan heard his voice and stared at him with his single eye. It seemed to be thinking about what he said and what he meant. Although it could not understand Ji Tianxing's words, it could feel that Ji Tianxing did not have any malice or murderous intent. It was as if he was explaining something to it. The Zhulingshan took a deep look at Ji Tianxing and then landed on the scorched earth ruins. It looked down at the ancient statue and the ancient tree. However, at this time, Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, and Yu Zhengfei arrived. Swish, 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 swish. 5 streamers cut through the night sky and came to the top of the ruined temple. Everyone had not figured out the situation in the field. They only saw the Zhulingshan standing in the ruins with his back to them, staring at the statue attentively. Suddenly, Qianshan Jinwu and Di Jianqing were delighted, and their eyes flashed with killing intent. "This is a good opportunity. Hurry up. We can't miss this opportunity." Almost at the same time, Qianshan Jinwu and Di Jianqing attacked together. They slashed out a few sword rays that could split heaven and earth, aiming at the Zhulingshan's head. Stop. Ji Tianxing realized that something was wrong and immediately shouted coldly. However, it was too late when he shouted at everyone. Chapter 595. Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, 5 powerful sword rays slashed at Zhulingshan. Caught off guard, the Zhulingshan was sent flying by the 5 sword rays and smashed into the ground, creating a huge pit. The entire peak of the mountain had completely collapsed. Numerous gullies had appeared, extending in all directions and spreading across the entire mountain peak. The mountain peak had already been torn apart and was on the verge of collapse. Now, after being hit by a few more sword rays, the mountain peak could no longer bear it and collapsed on the spot. With a series of muffled rumbles, the entire mountain peak turned into gravel and dirt, piling up into a ruined hill hundreds of meters high. The dust and dirt that rose into the sky covered the sky for more than 10 miles. The green ancient tree and the ancient statue were buried by countless gravel and dirt. The Julingshan was also buried in the ruins. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. In the night sky, Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, and the others suddenly revealed joyful smiles. Ha, great! This time, the Cyclops will be seriously injured even if he doesn't die. The 5 prodigies were certain that Julingshan would be killed or severely injured by their ultimate moves when he was caught off guard. Qianshan Jinwu looked at Ji Tianxing condescendingly and said in a dignified voice, Ji Tianxing, you have done a good job. You have successfully led the Julingshan here and attracted his attention. If we can kill the Julingshan, you will have a great contribution. He had the attitude of a leader and seemed to be praising his subordinate. However, Ji Tianxing looked at him coldly and said in a low voice, You idiots, you've ruined my plan. You are too naive. Do you think the Julingshan is so easy to kill? He had finally found the abandoned temple and risked his life to lead the Julingshan here. The Julingshan was about to uncover the mystery of the statue and the ancient tree. His plan was about to succeed. But at this time, Qianshan Jinwu and the others attacked and destroyed the entire mountain peak. How could he not be angry? Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, and the others were stunned after being scolded by him. After recollecting themselves, the Heaven's favorites' expressions changed. They stared at him with anger. Qianshan Jinwu's face was as cold as ice. He said in a cold tone, Ji Tianxing, your previous performance was commendable. You made me look at you in a new light. But now, it seems that you've long been scared out of your wits by the mighty miracle god. You're actually so timid. Truly disappointing. Perhaps he still had to consider his status as a disciple of an aristocratic family and pretend to be reserved and noble, so his words were more tactful. Di Jianqing didn't have so many scruples. He looked coldly at Ji Tianxing and sneered, Ji Tianxing, do you think that by luring the mighty miracle god here, you can completely solve the problem? Do you think that just because you've made a contribution, you can be arrogant and insult other participants as you please? If not for our help, you would have been killed by the mighty miracle god long ago. How could you have survived until now? The other 2 participants also reprimanded Ji Tianxing with righteous indignation. Only Yu Zhengfei frowned. After pondering for a moment, he asked, Ji Tianxing, what is this mountain peak? I saw that there seemed to be a statue on the mountain peak before. Obviously, Yu Zhengfei realized something and guessed that Ji Tianxing might have found some clues. Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, there are 2 temples outside the giant miracle city. The temple that Di Jianqing found was a new temple built 200 years ago. Before that, there was a dilapidated temple that had been used for more than 100 years on this mountain. There was an ancient tree and a statue in the abandoned temple. They seemed to be a little strange and had a very close relationship with the mighty miracle god. If we want to completely solve the crisis of the giant miracle city, it's impossible to rely on killing alone. We must find the root of the problem. Ji Tianxing only used a few words to explain the matter concisely and clearly. Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, Yu Zhengfei, and the others immediately understood the key of the problem and their faces changed on the spot. Di Jianqing, in particular, looked unnatural and a touch of embarrassment flashed in his eyes. Qianshan Jinwu did not change his expression and did not feel ashamed at all. He asked, Ji Tianxing, do you mean that the mighty miracle god's attack on the people in the city has something to do with the ancient tree and the statue? Before Ji Tianxing had time to answer, the ruins under his feet shook violently. There was a loud rumbling sound and the ruins of the hill collapsed. Bang! A golden light rushed out of the hill and rushed into the night sky as fast as lightning. The whole hill, which was hundreds of meters high, suddenly collapsed and became a low mound. Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, and the others were attacked by the golden light before they could react. The huge figure in the golden light was the mighty miracle god. Roar! The mighty miracle god roared angrily and stretched out his wide and huge palms, slapping toward the 2 geniuses. The 2 geniuses could not dodge and were slapped away on the spot. Bang! Bang! The 2 geniuses spat out blood and flew thousands of meters away. They crashed into a mountain in the distance, creating 2 deep pits and several huge ravines on the mountain. After slapping the 2 geniuses, the mighty miracle god rushed toward Qianshan Jinwu, Di Jianqing, and Yu Jingfei without hesitation. Only then did the 3 of them see clearly that there was a huge wound on the back of the mighty miracle god's head and back. White bones were exposed in the deep wounds, which were still dripping with golden blood. However, the mighty miracle god's strength was not reduced at all after suffering such serious injuries. Instead, it was in a state of fury. Di Jianqing had been hit by the thunder light beam and was severely injured. He was charred black all over. After slapping the 2 geniuses, the mighty miracle god stared at him with its single eye and released a destructive thunder light beam. Kaboom! It's over! My life is over! Di Jianqing broke out in a cold sweat. His eyes were filled with horror and fear. He knew that it was useless to run away. There was no way he could dodge the thunder light beam. He manipulated the Cloud Scar ancient sword and turned it into a huge golden sword to block in front of him. Bang! With a deafening sound, the thunder light beam hit the huge golden sword and sent him and the sword flying. The huge golden sword collapsed on the spot, shattering into countless golden shards. The Cloud Scar ancient sword was sent flying and fell into the ruins. Di Jianqing was turned into charcoal again and slammed into a mountain thousands of meters away. A huge pit was formed in the mountain. Di Jianqing was buried in the ruins and had completely fainted. Although he did not die on the spot after suffering such serious injuries, he was on his last breath. With an injury of this degree, he would need at least half a month to heal before he could regain his fighting strength. The mighty miracle god had gone completely mad. After sending Di Jianqing flying, it charged toward Qianshan Jinwu and Yu Jingfei ferociously. Chapter 596. Previously, when the mighty miracle god attacked Giant Holy City, the 9 geniuses could not defeat it. Now, only Qianshan Jinwu and Yu Jingfei were left. How could they be a match for the mighty miracle god? The 2 of them were chased by the mighty miracle god, so they ran for their lives without feeling ashamed or disgraced. After all, the mighty miracle god was too powerful. The mighty miracle god in its berserk state was even more terrifying. If the 2 of them did not run for their lives, they would die here. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would definitely be seriously injured and faint like Di Jianqing. The mighty miracle god chased them for 30 miles and seriously injured Qianshan Jinwu and Yu Jingfei. Qianshan Jinwu was hit by the lightning beam and was charred like charcoal. He escaped with serious injuries. Yu Jingfei was also beaten up and covered in blood. He was extremely miserable and had to use 2 heavenly origin talismans to escape back to Giant Holy City. The mighty miracle god did not kill them. He turned and flew back in the direction of the abandoned temple. At this time, Ji Tianxing had already entered the ruins and found the ancient tree and the ancient statue in the depths of the ruins. Unfortunately, the tens of thousands of branches of the ancient tree had withered and all the green leaves on the tree had fallen off. The ancient tree, which was full of vitality, had turned into a bare and withered tree. The ancient statue had also been split into 2, and numerous cracks had appeared on its surface. Ji Tianxing used his vital essence to condense 2 giant palms. He lifted the withered tree and the broken statue and placed them on the ruins. The power contained in the ancient tree and the statue is so powerful that even my spiritual sense could not detect it. How could it become a withered tree and the statue be broken? How could this be? There's no way Qianshan Jinwu and the other 4 could have unleashed sword lights that were so powerful. Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion and realized that there must be a problem. He tried to use his spiritual sense to detect the broken statue. As a result, he found that the mysterious and powerful power contained in the statue had disappeared. Now, the statue had become very ordinary. It was a stone statue that had been etched by wind and frost for more than 300 years. It could collapse and shatter at any time. He then used his spiritual perception to probe the ancient tree and found that there was a mysterious force inside the ancient tree that was extremely powerful. Furthermore, The mysterious energy seemed to be constantly vibrating and making rhythmic sounds. Bang, bang, bang. Ji Tianxing was no stranger to this deep and rhythmic sound. It was the sound of a heartbeat. The mysterious power of the ancient tree is still there. There is still the sound of a heartbeat. He immediately revealed a trace of joy, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He hurriedly manipulated his spirit sense into the ancient tree and quickly saw that the mysterious power that was emitting the heartbeat was actually a ball of dark golden light. Within the dazzling golden light was a dark golden gem the size of a wash basin. The gem looked like a peach, but it looked more like a heart. The surface of the gemstone was covered with complicated patterns, and there were also some mysterious patterns, which seemed to contain some kind of profound array power. Ji Tianxing quickly condensed his true essence into a giant hand and reached into the withered ancient tree. He took out the golden heart-shaped gem and carefully observed it. Looking at the heart-shaped gem at a close distance, he found that this gem was lifelike, just like a real heart. Not only did the gem vibrate rhythmically with the heartbeat, but it also emitted a majestic vitality. It actually had a powerful vitality. This heart-shaped gem was actually a living thing. At this moment, Ji Tianxing finally understood. No wonder the statue and the ancient tree both contained a mysterious power and were connected to each other. No wonder the ancient tree seemed to have wisdom and life, and it was even emitting heartbeat sounds. It was all because of this heart-shaped gem. After understanding all this, another thought popped up in his mind. This heart-shaped gem was nurtured in the ancient tree and is closely related to the statue. Could it be the thing that the mighty miracle god is looking for? At this moment, the mighty miracle god flew back as fast as lightning. Swoosh! It landed on the ruins from the night sky and stood 300 meters in front of Ji Tianxing. When its feet stepped on the ground within a radius of 10 miles trembled several times, and 2 huge footprints were left on the ground. The mighty miracle god looked down at Ji Tianxing from above. It looked at the withered tree and the broken statue, and then its eyes fell on the heart-shaped gem. Unexpectedly, it didn't attack Ji Tianxing. Its single eye stared at the heart-shaped gem, and its pupils revealed a look of excitement and excitement. What? The mighty miracle god bent down and stretched out a pair of huge palms. It slowly stretched out towards Ji Tianxing and issued a strange low roar from its mouth. The voice was somewhat trembling and contained a strong excitement and surprise. Ji Tianxing looked up at the mighty miracle god and saw its palms stretched out. He raised the heart-shaped gem in his hand and said with a solemn expression, "Mighty miracle god, my spiritual sense sensed that you have a mysterious connection with this heart-shaped gem. Your breathing is the same as the heartbeat of this gem. If I'm not wrong, the thing you're looking for should be this gem." The mighty miracle god's palms stretched out in front of Ji Tianxing and then stopped. It stared at Ji Tianxing with its single eye, revealing a look of serious contemplation, as if it was thinking about what Ji Tianxing had said. Ji Tianxing revealed a trace of a smile. He condensed a big hand with true essence and placed the heart-shaped gem in its right palm. The mighty miracle god looked at the heart-shaped gem in its palm and then deeply looked at Ji Tianxing. Suddenly, it bent its right leg and knelt on one knee on the ground. It held the heart-shaped gem in its right hand and covered its heart with its left palm. It bowed its head towards Ji Tianxing and paused for 3 breaths of time. There was no doubt that this was the etiquette of the Cyclops giant clan. It was to express the most sincere gratitude to the other party. After saluting, the mighty miracle god slowly stood up. His right palm surged with a rich golden light, and a majestic power was poured into the heart-shaped gem. Suddenly, the heart-shaped gem the size of a wash basin violently swelled and bloomed with a dazzling golden light. In just a few breaths of time, the heart-shaped gem had swelled to the size of a house. The mysterious patterns on the surface of the dark golden gem were all removed by the mighty miracle god. The gem returned to its original state, turning into a huge golden heart. After that, the mighty miracle god held the golden heart in its right hand and pressed it against its heart. The golden heart bloomed with golden light and slowly merged into its body, drilling into its heart. When the golden heart returned to its original position, the mighty miracle god's body shook. It closed its eyes and silently operated its martial arts. Suddenly, its entire body lit up with dazzling five-colored spiritual light and rushed up thousands of feet into the sky, illuminating the surrounding dozens of miles of the night sky with incomparable brilliance. Moreover, Ji Tianxing could sense that the power in the mighty miracle god's body was undergoing a drastic change and improvement. It was originally at the peak of sky origin stage 9th level, half a step into the soul refining stage. Chapter 597. Ji Tianxing witnessed the changes in the Juling Shen with his own eyes, as well as the process of it breaking through to the soul refining realm. He immediately understood that the golden heart was originally the Juling Shen's. Previously, the Juling Shen was missing a heart, so it only had the strength of a half-step soul refining realm, and it was still searching everywhere for its heart. Now that its heart had returned to its original position, it broke through the shackles and reached the soul refining realm. Moreover, Ji Tianxing could clearly feel that the Juling Shen's aura was powerful and majestic, and there was also a thick berserk aura. Now, the Juling Shen's aura had become even more powerful and majestic, but there was no longer any berserk aura. It seemed incomparably sacred and majestic, like a real god. Although Ji Tianxing wanted to know why the Juling Shen lost its heart, why was its heart hidden in the ancient tree of the abandoned temple? What was the story behind this? What had it experienced? But unfortunately, he and the Juling Shen did not speak the same language, so they were unable to communicate. After a while, the Juling Shen finished breaking through and opened its golden eye. Its entire body surged with multicolored light, rushing into the night sky, spreading in all directions, sprinkling on the surrounding mountain peaks and the earth. Suddenly, a magical scene appeared. In the surrounding barren mountain peaks, on the barren earth, patches of green grass and trees immediately appeared. The grass and saplings on the ground grew at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into lush forests and grasslands. After a short 100 breaths of time, the surrounding mountain peaks were covered by green grass and forests. The mountains and rivers within a radius of dozens of miles were restored to vitality and greenery, and there were even streams and waterfalls in the mountains, just like a beautiful scene. Such a magical scene was simply like a miracle. Ji Tianxing was full of shock and yearning, thinking to himself, could it be that this is the strength and means of a soul-refining realm powerhouse? At this time, the Juling Shen lowered its head and looked at him, extending its right hand to him, and its single eye revealed a friendly look. Ji Tianxing vaguely understood its meaning, and flew to its palm and stood still. Then the Juling Shen placed him on its left shoulder, bringing him into the sky, and flew in the direction of the Juling city. After the two of them left, two candidates covered in blood quietly crawled out of one of the mountains that had a crack on them. They looked rather pathetic. These two were the Heaven's Prides who had been following Qianshan Jinwu. Just now, they had been sent flying by Juling Shen's palm. They had been seriously injured and had smashed into the mountain peak. So, they had pretended to be dead and didn't show up. The scene of Ji Tianxing taking out the golden heart and returning it to Juling Shen was clearly seen by the two of them. The two of them were extremely shocked, and their emotions were very complicated. However, they hid in the mountain peak and did not dare to show their faces. At this time, they waited for Ji Tianxing and Juling Shen to go far away before they dared to come out. The two of them stood on a grassland and looked at the figures of Juling Shen and Ji Tianxing as they left. Their faces were filled with envy and jealousy. I really didn't expect that Ji Tianxing would have such a fortuitous encounter. He found what the mighty miracle god was looking for and even received the gratitude of the mighty miracle god. Maybe we were wrong from the beginning. The crisis of Giant Holy City can't be resolved by killing. We were beaten so miserably by the mighty miracle god, but Ji Tianxing can become friends with the mighty miracle god. It seems that this crisis will be resolved. Ji Tianxing will become the biggest hero. Alice. Thinking of this, the two of them were a little nervous. If the crisis of Giant Holy City was resolved, this assessment would be over. Based on their performance these days, could they pass the assessment of the Imperial Court? The two of them were a little depressed. They had a premonition of a bad ending. The mighty miracle god was flying back to giant holy city with Ji Tianxing. Along the way, the mighty miracle god would spray out an overwhelming cyan streamer when they flew over the barren mountains and rivers. The endless cyan light, which contained the majestic vitality of the green wood, fell on the barren mountains and barren land. Immediately, patches of grass and trees grew. The grass and saplings grew rapidly. In just a few dozen breaths, they grew into grasslands and forests, covering the barren mountains and earth with thick green. Wherever the mighty miracle god flew over, the barren mountains and rivers were restored to their original state. The mountains and rivers became beautiful and full of spiritual energy. Half an hour later, when the mighty miracle god and Ji Tianxing flew back to giant holy city, the dark brown wilderness outside the city had become a green grassland. The city was still noisy and boiling. Hundreds of thousands of people were still in a state of panic and fear. Duanmu Yulong, the three princes, Qianshan Jinwu, Yu Zhengfei, and others were all resisting their injuries. They were busy comforting the people in the city and cleaning up the ruins in the North City district. Suddenly, many people saw the mighty miracle god fly to the top of the city and stand in the air. Many people were scared out of their wits. They screamed in horror and despair and fled in panic. Duanmu Yulong, Qianshan Jinwu, and others' faces turned ugly. Their eyes were filled with grief and helplessness. Damn it! Why is the mighty miracle god back? The 10 contestants are seriously injured. Now we are at the end of our rope. How can we stop the mighty miracle god's attack? It's over. The giant holy city can't be saved. The city is going to be destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of people are going to die. I'm afraid we will die here too. Just when the elites were in despair, Qianshan Jinwu suddenly saw a person standing on the left shoulder of the mighty miracle god. The figure was tall and straight. He was wearing a white robe and a golden cloak. He looked very handsome and mighty. Qianshan Jinwu took a closer look and recognized that the extraordinary young man was Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing? He is standing with the mighty miracle god? Qianshan Jinwu was stunned and exclaimed in disbelief. Duanmu Yulong and the other martial emperor's sons were dumbfounded when they saw Ji Tianxing's figure. What's going on? Why is Ji Tianxing in cahoots with the mighty miracle god? Is he going to destroy the giant holy city? Despicable bastard. No wonder he has been sneaking around before. No. If he has pledged allegiance to the mighty miracle god, he will not be able to pass the assessment. He will even be punished by the imperial court. Everyone was puzzled and did not understand what was going on. At this moment, the mighty miracle god waved his giant palms and shot out a colorful stream of light. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 5-colored brilliance that blotted out the sky enveloped the giant holy city within a radius of 100 miles. It was like a 5-colored light curtain. As the colorful light shone on the city, the giant holy city immediately underwent a huge change. The broken ground began to heal, the deep pits were automatically filled, and the collapsed houses were quickly restored. All the destroyed houses and buildings were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. The colorful light also contained a powerful soul-calming power. When it shone on the hundreds of thousands of people, the people immediately calmed down. Everyone was no longer frightened and no longer fled in a panic. They had also received the order from the mighty miracle god. They stopped and looked up at the mighty miracle god and Ji Tianxing in the sky. They all showed a pious expression and knelt down to worship. The mighty miracle god, our guardian angel, has returned. Chapter 598. Hundreds of thousands of people in giant holy city prostrated themselves in worship to Ji Tianxing and Zhuling Xin. The people shouted in unison, like rolling thunder resounding through the sky, shaking the entire giant holy city. The people regarded Zhuling Xin as their guardian and Ji Tianxing as their savior to thank and worship. Everyone's expression and eyes revealed piety and fanaticism. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the rest were petrified and dumbfounded when they saw the scene of hundreds of thousands of people prostrating themselves in worship. Everyone was completely dumbfounded, not knowing what was going on. giant holy city, which was on the verge of destruction, returned to normal in the blink of an eye. How could this be? But what did Ji Tianxing do? Why is he called a savior by the people? This is impossible. We risked our lives to protect giant holy city, but the people in the city are worshipping Ji Tianxing? There is a problem. There must be a problem. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the rest could not accept this result. Especially Duanmu Yulong, who was the most angry and unwilling. At this moment, Zhu Lingshin waved his hand, making the people in the city quiet down. He used his left hand to hold Ji Tianxing in front of him and slowly raised his right hand to remove the golden eye on his forehead. The huge golden eye immediately shrunk countless times and turned into a dark golden eyeball. Then, Zhu Lingshin controlled the dark golden eyeball to fly to Ji Tianxing and drill into his forehead. In the blink of an eye, the dark golden eyeball fused with Ji Tianxing and became his third eye. There is a blue eyeball in the golden eye, which is filled with flickering blue lightning. Obviously, it contains powerful thunder power. This is not an ordinary third eye, but Zhu Lingshin's thunder spirit eye. In order to thank Ji Tianxing, Zhu Lingshin actually gave the thunder spirit eye to Ji Tianxing. When Ji Tianxing successfully fused with the thunder spirit eye, Zhu Lingshin revealed a satisfied smile. The hundreds of thousands of people in the city also cheered excitedly. Savior! Hero! Savior! Protector's friend, revered savior, we are forever grateful to you. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others were shocked speechless. They were petrified. They stared dumbfoundedly at Ji Tianxing. Looking at his newly acquired thunder spirit eyes, they were so jealous that they almost went crazy. The prodigies knew very well how powerful the thunder spirit eyes were. After all, they had all been blasted into a miserable state by the lightning beam. And now, Zhu Lingshin had given the thunder spirit eyes to Ji Tianxing. But this is impossible. Why should I give him the thunder spirit eyes? Ji Tianxing clearly didn't do anything. What right does he have to be the savior of the world and receive the thunder spirit eyes? This isn't true, I don't believe it. Duanmu Yulong and the other geniuses were both confused and enraged. They all let out unsatisfied growls. However, everything was over. Shwa! In the gloomy sky, a dazzling white light suddenly flashed across and formed a huge teleportation portal, which was suspended above giant holy city. Zhu Lingshin in the sky and the hundreds of thousands of people in the city suddenly became motionless like stone statues. Except for Ji Tianxing and the other prodigies who could still move normally, giant holy city seemed to have stopped the flow of time. The scene was completely frozen. At the same time, a powerful and majestic voice rang out from the huge teleportation portal. Candidates, the second round of the examination is over. You should leave now. Everyone immediately recognized that it was the voice of the imperial tutor. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others looked at the motionless giant holy city below and the teleportation portal in the sky. They suddenly realized something. It turned out that this world was an illusory world created by the imperial court with the array formation. Ji Tianxing took the lead and flew high into the sky. He stepped into the teleportation portal and left this world. After that, Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others came to their senses and stepped into the teleportation portal with unwillingness and anger. In the square at the foot of sky-reaching peak, tens of thousands of people were still immersed in shock. Everyone stared at the huge light shield on the high platform and watched the scene on the light shield gradually disappear. They gradually came to their senses. After that, everyone cheered excitedly, shouted and discussed fiercely. This is incredible. That Zhu Lingshin is really like a deity. Ji Tianxing is too miraculous, too powerful. At the beginning, he was the most inconspicuous. Who would have thought that he would become the savior of giant holy city? Ha ha ha, what happened in just a few days is like the most realistic story. It's really enjoyable to watch. Before the examination began, I thought Ji Tianxing would definitely be eliminated. I didn't expect him to hide so deeply. Not only is he powerful, but he is also very thoughtful and meticulous. Ji Tianxing's performance is too perfect. He has far surpassed all the other candidates. There is no doubt about that. I admire Ji Tianxing so much. He is handsome, powerful, calm and wise, brave and resourceful. He is simply a perfect man. I really want to marry him. I really didn't expect that those geniuses, who are so famous and powerful, also have such an unsightly side. I really look down on them. Yes, the two most powerful geniuses only care about fighting for power and trying to show off. A few mediocre geniuses, who have no ability to rule and govern, and who are also afraid of death. The imperial court's examination method is simply wonderful. It's real and fair, and it allows everyone to supervise and judge together. It's very enjoyable to watch. It was obvious that the actions of the 10 contestants in the past few days were presented in the light shield on the high platform like a movie. Tens of thousands of people clearly watched the whole process of the examination. They were very shocked and excited. Moreover, after watching the performance of the 10 candidates, everyone had their own opinions and judgments in their hearts. Almost everyone agreed that Ji Tianxing's performance was perfect and impeccable. He was really the savior of Giant Holy City. As for the performance of the other 9 geniuses, it seemed to be lackluster. There were not many shining points. The crowd was still cheering and discussing excitedly. Countless voices converged into a mighty sound wave torrent, shaking the entire square. Yun Yao, Jiku, Yin, Chen Yu, and the others in the crowd were also very excited and cheering. In the past few days, they had been staring at the picture on the light screen and had been paying attention to Ji Tianxing. When Ji Tianxing performed well, they were all excited and cheered for Ji Tianxing. When Ji Tianxing encountered difficulties and was suppressed by other geniuses, they prayed and worried for Ji Tianxing silently. Fortunately, the second round of the examination was finally over. Ji Tianxing lived up to everyone's expectations and became the most dazzling and perfect one among the 10 geniuses. Everyone had been worried about him for several days. Now they could finally rest assured. Yun Yao, who was like an ice fairy, showed a rare smile. Her eyes were full of gratification. She murmured silently, "Tianxing, you are really the most outstanding. No matter how outstanding the geniuses are, you are the most dazzling one." Ji Qingyan were jumping excitedly, waving their arms and cheering for Ji Tianxing. "Brother Tianxing, you are so great. I knew you would always be the best. You are the savior of Giant Holy City. Senior brother Tianxing is so handsome that he has broken through the heavens. Even the Giant Holy Spirit has to kneel down to salute him and give him a divine eye. This is a supreme honor." Qian Yu also smiled and squinted her eyes. She said proudly, "I have said it before. With the means of our elder Ji, he can easily crush those 9 so-called geniuses." Chapter 599. In the square at the foot of the mountain, the people discussed heatedly for a long time before they gradually calmed down. The imperial tutor and Long Yunxiao stood on the high platform and looked at the ancient stone gate calmly. They were waiting for the 10 sovereigns to return. The tens of thousands of people gradually stopped talking and looked at the towering stone gate. After a while, a white light flashed from the stone gate and a handsome figure appeared out of thin air. The sovereign who walked out of the stone gate first was wearing a white robe and a golden battle robe. He was Ji Tianxing, the savior of the world. When he stepped over the stone gate and returned to the high platform, the tens of thousands of people in the square couldn't help but cheer and shout, "Ji Tianxing! This is incredible! You're the best! Whichever city has a city governor like you will be the happiest and most stable city. Ji Tianxing! Whether you can become the city governor of the Tianshan region or not, you will be famous in the central region from now on." Before the start of the assessment, most of the people in the square didn't think Ji Tianxing was going to win. They were gloating over his misfortune. At this moment, when they saw Ji Tianxing's performance, they had a whole new level of respect for him. Many of the people in the square were weak. They all hoped that their cities could have a city governor like Ji Tianxing. Of course, they admired and supported him very much. Ji Tianxing stood on the high platform and looked at the enthusiastic and excited people in the square. He couldn't help but smile. He knew that what he had done in Giant Holy City had won the hearts of many people. Then, several white lights flashed from the ancient stone gate. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanwu Yulong, Yu Zhengfei and the others walked out of the stone gate and returned to the high platform. They were a little depressed. When they saw the people in the square talking and cheering, they felt even more depressed. However, they had to take care of their image and demeanor. They couldn't show any resentment or jealousy. They stood side by side with Ji Tianxing on the high platform and waited for the imperial tutor to announce the results of the assessment. However, after waiting for a long time, there were only 9 contestants on the high platform. There was still one person who hadn't appeared. The imperial tutor frowned and asked in a dignified tone, "What's going on? Where's the other contestant?" Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanwu Yulong, and the others were silent. Long Yunxiao said expressionlessly, 9 of the 10 contestants are here. Only Di Jianqing has not appeared. I remember that he was beaten by the mighty. Hearing this, the people in the square began to whisper to each other. Some people even laughed softly. The imperial preceptor's eyebrows knitted together, revealing a look of disappointment. However, he didn't say anything. With a wave of his hand, he executed a formation and sent it into the ancient stone door. After a while, a figure wrapped in colorful spiritual light flew out of the stone door and landed on the high platform. Everyone immediately saw that the figure was Di Jianqing. His body was charred like charcoal and he was still in a coma. "Take him away for treatment," the imperial tutor ordered in a dignified tone. Immediately, 2 imperial guards came over and took the unconscious Di Jianqing away. Then, the imperial tutor looked around and said in a loud voice, "Everyone, the second round of the assessment is over. The giant holy city you see is only an illusory world created by the imperial tutor. Everything is fake." However, everyone has seen the performance of the 10 contestants when the giant holy city was facing a crisis. The purpose of this battle for the position of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord was to select a wise and virtuous ruler for the Heavenly Stellar Region. As a leader, not only must you have strength and strategy, but you must also be bold, careful, flexible, and put the safety of the people first. When the territory and people under your jurisdiction are in a crisis, you must have enough responsibility and ability to solve the problem as soon as possible. This is a qualified leader. Because of this, we have adopted this method for the second round of the assessment. The imperial tutor spoke loudly about the meaning and purpose of the second round of the assessment. Nearly 10,000 people and warriors in the square nodded in agreement. Except for Ji Tianxing, the other contestants were a little nervous. They were silently guessing the result of the assessment. Who would pass? The imperial tutor continued, "In this round of the assessment, Ji Tianxing's performance was the most outstanding. He was brave, resourceful, bold, and careful. Therefore, he could find the abnormality of the Juling Shin, investigate the clues of the abandoned temple, and finally help the Juling Shin find the lost heart and save the giant holy city. There is no doubt that Ji Tianxing passed the assessment perfectly and received the Thunderbolt spiritual eyes from the Juling Shin. That is a hidden reward specially set by the imperial tutor. Only the person who really solves the root of the problem can receive this reward." Hearing this, countless commoners began to discuss with envious expressions. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanwu Yulong, and the others became more and more jealous and depressed. They looked at Ji Tianxing with hostility. However, Ji Tianxing looked indifferent. His face was as calm as usual. He only glanced at them with the Thunderbolt spiritual eyes on his forehead. The golden eyes and the blue pupils were flashing with streaks of lightning. They were as majestic as the eyes of a god. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanwu Yulong, and the others had been struck by the lightning released by the Thunderbolt spiritual eyes. Now, they still had lingering fears when they saw the lightning. They hated Ji Tianxing even more. At this time, the imperial tutor announced loudly, "Before this round of the assessment, I have already said that 5 people will be eliminated in this round of the assessment. In addition to Ji Tianxing, the other 4 people who passed the assessment were Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanwu Yulong, Yu Zhengfei, and Di Jianqing. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanwu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei are strong in governing and planning. They are calm in the face of danger and can take charge of the overall situation. Di Jianxing's performance is also commendable. Although he didn't find any deeper clues, he is bold and careful. When the people in the square heard the imperial tutor's announcement, there was a burst of discussion. Since 5 out of the 10 participants are eliminated, then Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others will definitely pass the assessment. Other than Ji Tianxing, no one expected this. The other 4 aren't surprising. After all, they are very strong. The 4 who passed the assessment are very ordinary. They can't be compared to Ji Tianxing at all. How good would it be if 9 people were eliminated in this assessment? Ji Tianxing will definitely be the Tianxin Zone Lord. After all, this is only the second round of the assessment and not the final one. This result is more reasonable. The expressions of the 8 contestants also changed subtly. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei let out a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Chapter 600. The tens of thousands of people and martial artists in the square were still talking about it. The 5 eliminated geniuses could only dejectedly leave and walk down the high platform. Then, the imperial tutor announced loudly, "The 5 participants who passed the second round of assessment, please rest and recuperate as soon as possible. Tomorrow morning, the imperial court will hold the third round of assessment here. The 5 of you will fight in the arena. This is the last round of the assessment. 4 people will be eliminated, and the final winner will become the Tianxin region lord." When the imperial preceptor's voice fell, many people burst into excited cheers. Ji Tianxing, Qianshan Jinwu, and the others also looked expectant and confident. After the imperial tutor announced the news, he left the square with Long Yunxiao and returned to the imperial court at the top of the mountain. The tens of thousands of people and martial artists in the square were still waiting. No one was willing to leave. Everyone knew that tomorrow would be the most exciting day. The 5 geniuses would fight in public to determine the winner. Who would become the Tianxin region lord would be revealed tomorrow. Ji Tianxing, Qianshan Jinwu, and the others left the stage. They immediately took the time to recuperate. Ji Tianxing had just returned to Yun Yao and Ji Ku when he was surrounded by them. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and Yin are all congratulated him excitedly and expressed the excitement in their hearts. Even Kun Wu and Ling Yichen came over and greeted Ji Tianxing and congratulated him. Ji Tianxing chatted with the crowd for a while, then left the square and found a mountain nearby. He found a cave in the mountain and set up a simple array. Then he sat on a millstone and began to cultivate. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and the others were seriously injured and had used up a lot of energy. They would not be able to recover in a short day. However, he was only slightly injured. With the powerful self-healing ability of the Kenshin bloodline, he could recover without the need to cultivate. He cultivated for 4 hours. His cultivation and physical strength had completely recovered. His strength had returned to its peak state. Then, he began to study the third eye on his forehead, the Thunder Spirit Eye. Even though he knew that this lightning spiritual eye was a reward set up by the imperial court, there shouldn't be any problems. However, he had yet to use the Thunder Spirit pupil after obtaining it, so he had to study it carefully before he could use it freely. Qianshan Jinwu, Duanmu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei are all very strong. Especially Qianshan Jinwu, who is 4 levels higher than me. It's almost impossible for me to defeat him. The power of the lightning spirit eyes is also very strong. If I can use it properly, I will definitely be able to greatly increase my battle prowess. Perhaps I will have a chance to defeat my opponent. After making up his mind, Ji Tianxing tried to control the Thunderbolt Spirit Eyes on his forehead. The Thunder Spirit Eyes had already fused with his body and became a part of him, so of course he could control it smoothly. After several attempts, he finally managed to hide the Lightning Spirit Eyes. His forehead returned to normal, and no one could see any abnormalities. With just a thought, the Thunder Spirit pupil would appear. When he did not need to use it, he could hide the spirit pupil. This is pretty good. If I can't hide the spirit pupil, it will feel weird to go out with 3 eyes. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself as he tried to control the lightning energy in the spirit pupil. After studying it for an hour, he realized that there was not much lightning energy in the spirit pupil. It could only release a lightning beam. The most amazing thing about the lightning spirit pupil was that it could communicate with the lightning energy in the world and gather it in the spirit pupil to condense it into a lightning beam. After Ji Tianxing understood the lightning spirit pupil, he tried to activate the lightning energy. He released a blue lightning beam and blasted it toward the cave wall. Suddenly, a lightning beam as thick as a water bucket shot out and blasted the dark brown cave wall. Kaboom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the cave collapsed. The entire mountain shook violently, and countless wide gullies appeared on the ground. The interior of the mountain was filled with blue lightning and electric arcs, burning the collapsed dust and rocks into black scorched earth. Ji Tianxing had already flown out of the cave and was standing in the sky above the mountain. Looking at the crumbling mountain peak below, he couldn't help but frown as he thought to himself, the power of the thunderbolt spiritual eyes is indeed extraordinary. However, the lightning energy stored in the spirit pupil was used up in one shot. Moreover, the power of this lightning beam is much weaker than the one released by the mighty miracle god. It seems that the power of the lightning released by the spirit pupil is related to my cultivation. When I reach the 9th level of the sky origin realm, I will be as strong as the mighty miracle god and be able to destroy a mountain with a lightning beam. Ji Tianxing knew what to do and returned to the mountain peak. He activated the power of the lightning spirit pupil to absorb the lightning energy in the world and store it in the spirit pupil. In a short 6 hours, all the lightning energy within 100 miles had been absorbed by him. Only then did he end his cultivation. The spirit pupil could only store so much lightning energy. Once he released the lightning beam, the lightning energy would be used up in one shot. Therefore, he could only use the lightning spirit pupil as his trump card at the critical moment. For the rest of the night, he cultivated on the mountain peak and improved his strength silently. A new day came after the night had passed. When the sun rose, Ji Tianxing left the mountain peak and returned to the square at the foot of the sky-reaching peak. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were cheering for him and praying for him to win today. After all, the winner of the Sky Star Territory Lord would be decided in the arena today. After a while, Qianshan Junwu, Duanwu Yulong, Yu Zhengfei, and Di Jianqing arrived at the square one after another. Qianshan Junwu, Duanwu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei's injuries were light. After a day of recuperation, they seemed to be fine. Di Jianqing's injuries were the most serious. Even after a day of recuperation, he had only recovered 20 to 30%. He was still riddled with injuries and looked weak. He only had 40 to 50% of his combat strength at his peak. The people in the square observed Ji Tianxing, Di Jianqing, and the others and began to whisper to each other. We will see the results today. I wonder who will become the Sky Star Territory Lord. I'm really looking forward to it. In my opinion, Qianshan Junwu is the most powerful among the 5. He has the best chance of becoming the Sky Star Territory Lord. After all, Duanwu Yulong is the emperor's son of an aristocratic family. He must have many trump cards. He has a high chance of winning. It's a pity that the arena competition will test one's true strength. Even though Ji Tianxing's performance was outstanding, I'm afraid he will be eliminated today. Ji Tianxing's strength is 4 to 5 realms lower than Qianshan Junwu and Duanwu Yulong. He will never win. Chapter 601. While the crowd was discussing, 2 streaks of light flew down from the mountain peak. Bush. The 2 streaks of light landed on the high platform, revealing 2 figures. They were the imperial tutor and the son of heaven, Long Yunxiao. The crowd quieted down and stared at the imperial tutor on the stage. The imperial tutor glanced at the crowd and saw that Ji Tianxing, Qianshan Junwu, and the other contestants were all present. He announced loudly, there are 5 contestants in today's competition. I will use the method of drawing lots to pick out 2 participants at a time. They will fight in the arena in front of everyone. The winner will advance and the loser will be eliminated. The imperial tutor announced the rules of the competition. He waved his hand and 5 streaks of golden light floated in the sky. There was a token in each of the streaks of golden light, which corresponded to the names of the 5 contestants. The imperial tutor waved his hand, and the 5 streaks of golden light danced in the air, messing up the order of the tokens. Son of Heaven, please draw lots for the 5 contestants. Long Yunxiao did not hesitate. He stretched out his hands and took out 2 streaks of golden light and handed them to the imperial tutor. The imperial tutor opened the golden light and took out the tokens inside. He announced loudly, "The first round, Ji Tianxing versus Di Jianqing." The crowd began to discuss after hearing the result. Di Jianqing's face was solemn and worried. But when he heard that his opponent was Ji Tianxing, he relaxed a lot. He turned his head and glanced at Ji Tianxing. A cold smile flashed in his eyes as he thought to himself, "With my current condition, I will definitely lose. There is no way I can defeat Qianshan Zhenwu and Duanwu Yulong. However, if I defeat Ji Tianxing first and then lose to those 2 guys, it won't be too bad." Qianshan Zhenwu and Duanwu Yulong obviously had the same idea. They both revealed a playful look. However, Ji Tianxing's expression didn't change at all. At this time, Long Yunxiao took 2 more golden lights from the sky and handed them to the imperial tutor. The imperial tutor opened the golden light and took out 2 tokens. He announced loudly, "The second round, Qianshan Zhenwu versus Yu Jingfei. In this round, Duanwu Yulong will not need to fight and will directly advance to the next round." As he finished talking, people started to talk about whether Yu Zhengfei could defeat Qianshan Zhenwu, who was at the 7th level of Sky Origin stage. Qianshan Zhenwu and Yu Zhengfei looked at each other. Yu Zhengfei's eyes were gloomy and solemn, as if he was facing a great enemy. Qianshan Zhenwu's eyes were full of confidence, with a hint of a smile. And the person who was in the best mood was naturally Duanwu Yulong. That was because he was lucky enough to get a bye. He didn't need to fight at all to advance. In this way, not only could he conserve his energy and hide his trump card, he could also take the opportunity to heal his injuries and restore his power. After the Imperial Preceptor announced the results of the drawing of lots, he activated the defensive formation on the high platform, using a huge dark yellow light shield to protect the entire high platform. This defensive array was extremely powerful. It was impossible for a Sky Origin stage cultivator to destroy it. The aftermath of the battle wouldn't spread out, so it wouldn't hurt the people in the square. I announced the start of the first round. As the Imperial Tutor finished talking, Di Jianqing stepped onto the stage first. Swoosh! He flashed and flew onto the stage with his ancient sword on his back. He crossed his arms and looked confident and powerful. He looked down at Ji Tianxing, who was below the stage, with a mocking sneer on his face. Apparently, he didn't take Ji Tianxing seriously at all. He thought he was going to win for sure. Many people thought the same. They all believed that Ji Tianxing would be defeated by Di Jianqing. The crowd started to talk again. Ji Tianxing's silhouette flashed and flew into the ring, standing 50 meters away from Di Jianqing. His expression was indifferent as he stood on the stage, his gaze calm as he looked at Di Jianqing. Di Jianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a sneer, "Ji Tianxing, I didn't expect you and I would be opponents. I don't know whether you are unlucky or I am lucky enough." Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly. "Di Jianqing, if you are smart enough, you should beg for mercy from me now. I don't want to beat you too badly. I don't want you to lose face." Hearing this, Di Jianqing's expression changed drastically. He opened his eyes with anger and coldness. "Ji Tianxing, you are too arrogant. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Those fools in Giant Holy City just called you a savior a few times. Do you really think that you're a savior? I think you are still living in a dream. You are only at Sky Origin stage. How can you defeat me? You will lose for sure." Ji Tianxing was not angry or angry. Instead, he looked at him with pity. He shook his head and sighed, "Disaster is coming, but you don't know it. You still want to show off in front of everyone. You really make me feel sorry for you." The people under the stage were all shocked. They looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. They exclaimed and discussed. Nobody expected Ji Tianxing to be so confident when facing Di Jianqing, who was only at Sky Origin stage 5th level. Di Jianqing was so angry that his face turned green. His chest was filled with anger. His body was filled with a strong desire to fight. Ji Tianqing, no matter how eloquent you are, it is useless. I will show you the marvelous sword art of the sword faction in the Green Crane Valley. I will let you know that even if I am severely injured, I can still defeat you easily. While talking, Di Jianqing made a sword spell with both hands and performed a secret sword art. The cloud scar ancient sword on his back flew up to the sky. It shone with 5 colors and turned into a huge 5-colored sword that was 10 meters long. One sword to startle the heavens. Di Jianqing suddenly let out a low roar and controlled the huge 5-colored sword to descend from the sky towards Ji Tianqing. The power of this sword was fierce and domineering. It was as if it could split the sky and the earth. The thousands of people around the stage opened their eyes wide. They stared at the huge 5-colored sword with anticipation. Everyone wanted to see if Ji Tianqing, who was so confident, could block Di Jianqing's marvelous sword technique. Ji Tianqing was still calm and unruffled. He looked at Di Jianqing with an expressionless face and said, "Your so-called marvelous sword art is nothing but a joke in front of me. You're just asking to be humiliated." As he spoke, a black sword appeared in his left hand. It was the Black Dragon Sword. He held the sword hilt with his right hand and pulled it out instantly. He unleashed a powerful aura and slashed at the huge 5-colored sword in the sky. Dragon soars from the 9 heavens. When the Black Dragon Sword was unsheathed, a loud dragon roar burst out. It echoed for dozens of miles. A 30-meter-long frost divine dragon suddenly appeared. It extended its claws and fangs. It unleashed a destructive aura and clashed with Di Jianqing's cloud scar ancient sword. Boom! The frost divine dragon and the huge 5-colored sword collided. A deafening sound was heard. At that moment, the entire square was shaking, and the sound waves stirred up layers of ripples in the sky. Chapter 602. The 5-colored giant sword was destroyed, and the cloud scar ancient sword was also blown away. It crashed into the yellow light barrier at the edge of the platform. The light barrier formed by the defensive formation was very strong. It was not damaged at all, and the cloud scar ancient sword fell to the ground. Di Jianqing's expression changed. His eyes were filled with shock. He couldn't believe that with Ji Tianqing's strength and cultivation base, he could execute such a magnificent and shocking sword strike. He had always been proud of his wondrous swordsmanship, but at this moment, when compared to Ji Tianqing, he was completely inferior and appeared ordinary. Before Di Jianqing could react, Ji Tianqing had already performed the second sword skill. Metal Slash. He held the Black Dragon Sword with both hands and activated all of his power. He slashed out a giant golden sword that was 40 meters long. The giant golden sword, carrying an incomparably sharp and fierce aura, slashed down from the sky with a force that could split the heavens and earth apart, slashing towards Di Jianqing with a loud bang. At that moment, the giant golden sword was as bright as the sun. It lit up the entire square. This was the first time Ji Tianqing had performed the 5 secret skills of Tianqing. Its power was far more powerful than the 5 sword skills of the Flying Star Sword technique. Di Jianqing's aura was locked down by the giant golden sword. He had nowhere to run. His eyes were filled with shock. Ji Tianqing's strength has reached such a level? How can he perform such a terrifying sword skill? The cloud scar ancient sword had already been blown away. At this critical moment, he could only use the remaining true yuan in his body to form a dark yellow true yuan shield. He also took out a black ink slab. This heaven origin spiritual treasure was used to block the power of the metal slash. After he injected true yuan into the black ink slab, it immediately expanded to a radius of 5 meters. It blocked the top of his head. Almost at the same time, the metal emperor slash, with the power to destroy everything, struck the ancient inkstone with a loud bang. Boom! Crack! Amidst the deafening noise, there was a clear cracking sound. That simple and unadorned pitch-black inkstone was split into 2 on the spot and flew out in 2 different directions. The metal slash only paused for a moment. Its power was weakened by about 30%. It hit Di Jianqing and drowned him. Boom! The metal slash hit the ground, creating a 100-meter-long trench on the green stone floor. Dust and gravel flew everywhere. Di Jianqing was smashed into the huge trench. He was lying in the rubble with blood all over his body. He had already passed out. Countless pieces of rubble buried him, causing him to end up in an even more miserable state. The platform was almost cut in half by the sword. The entire square was shaking violently. Fortunately, the high platform was built with the hardest lapis lazuli, and a powerful defensive array was set up, so it did not collapse on the spot. Otherwise, the metal slash. After a while, the golden light finally disappeared. Ji Tianxing put away the black dragon sword. He stood on the platform calmly. He had a carefree look on his face, as if the sword strike that destroyed the heavens and earth was just a casual move. Everyone was stunned. They looked at him in disbelief. It took them a long time to come back to their senses. No one could believe that Ji Tianxing, who was at Sky Origin Stage Level 3, defeated Di Jianqing, who was at Sky Origin Stage Level 5, with only 2 moves. Di Jianqing was the prime disciple of the sword faction. He was a true master of the sword. How could he lose so miserably? After the tens of thousands of citizens regained their senses, they immediately erupted into earth-shattering shouts and discussions. Many commoners and martial artists looked at Ji Tianxing with eyes full of shock and admiration. Qianshan Zhenwu, Duanwu Yulong, and Yu Zhengfei were also stunned. Their faces turned pale. The 3 of them thought that even though Di Jianqing was severely injured, he could still defeat Ji Tianxing. After all, there was a difference of 2 to 3 levels between Sky Origin Stage cultivators. They were not ordinary Sky Origin Stage cultivators. They were all famous talents in the Central Plains. Under such circumstances, Ji Tianxing could never defeat Di Jianqing. However, he did it. And he did it so easily. He crushed Di Jianqing in an overbearing and invincible manner. Qianshan Zhenwu and Duanwu Yulong sensed the danger. They stopped underestimating Ji Tianxing and decided to treat him with caution. After 100 breaths, the imperial tutor announced the result of the competition. Ji Tianxing wins the first round. Di Jianqing is eliminated. After he announced the result, several golden armor imperials jumped into the ditch. They dug out the unconscious Di Jianqing from the debris and carried him off the platform. Countless people saw Di Jianqing's miserable appearance. They all burst into laughter and discussions. Poor Di Jianqing. In the giant holy city, he was severely injured by the giant holy god and fainted. Now, under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, he was struck into the ground by Ji Tianxing's sword and fainted again. Today was definitely the most humiliating day in his life. He had lost all the face he could in his life. Then, the imperial preceptor used the power of the formation and quickly flattened the wide gully on the high platform. When the platform was restored, he announced loudly, "The second round is between Qianshan Zhenwu and Yu Zhengfei." Qianshan Zhenwu jumped onto the platform first. He held a golden heavy sword in his hand. His body was exuding a violent fighting spirit and an overbearing aura. Yu Zhengfei followed closely behind him. He flew onto the platform and stood facing Qianshan Zhenwu from 100 meters away. Qianshan Zhenwu silently activated the vital core in his body. He kept accumulating his aura and power. He looked at Yu Zhengfei and said confidently, "Brother Yu, please excuse me." Yu Zhengfei looked solemn and said in a low voice, "We are competing on the same platform. The winner is the king. What is there to be offended? Brother Qianshan, it is a great fortune to be able to fight with you. Today I will do my best." Qianshan Zhenwu also nodded solemnly and said, "Very good. I will definitely not underestimate you. I will definitely bring out my true abilities and have a good fight with you." 4 powerful cultivators, fighting with all their strength, was a way to respect each other. Yu Zhengfei was wearing a dragon-patterned armor. He held the coiling dragon spear with both hands. His fighting spirit surged and condensed into dark red flames. "Brother Qianshan, take this." When Yu Zhengfei's true essence accumulated to its peak, He let out a low roar and took the initiative to attack. 10 Ultimate Berserker Spear. He leaped into the air, reaching a height of 100 meters. Gripping the coiling dragon spear with both hands, he thrust out 10 huge dark red spear shadows with all his strength. Each spear shadow was 20 meters long. They were formed by terrifying flames and contained the power to destroy everything. The entire platform became incomparably hot, and even the air was distorted by the flames. 10 violent and overbearing spear shadows fell from the sky and enveloped Qianshan Jinwu's figure, leaving him nowhere to hide. However, Qianshan Jinwu had no intention of dodging. He waved his heavy sword and slashed out 5 fire divine dragons to meet Yu Zhengfei head-on. Fire 5 dragons slash. Both of their cultivation techniques had a ferocious and domineering characteristic. What they used was the power of fire. Such a head-on clash between two powerful forces instantly caused the eyes of the commoners in the square to widen. Their hearts were also in their throats. Bang, bang, bang. The 5 fire divine dragons flew into the sky and collided with the 10 dark red spears. There was a deafening sound. Chapter 603. The earth-shattering noise and the fire that filled the entire platform didn't disappear until a long time later. When the flames in the sky dissipated, everyone saw that Yu Zhengfei and Qianshan Jinwu were fighting fiercely in the arena. Qianshan Jinwu wasn't hurt at all. He looked normal and his qi was still violent. There was a wound on Yu Zhengfei's chest. There was blood on the corner of his mouth. Apparently he was slightly injured in the fight. However, he was an experienced warrior. Such a small injury wouldn't affect his combat effectiveness. It would only make him more violent. He dashed forward, wielding the coiling dragon spear with all of his strength. He continuously performed one destructive spear skill after another. Qianshan Jinwu was also doing his best. He wielded his golden sword and fought against Yu Zhengfei. He kept slashing out sword lights that could break the world. The fight soon reached the most intense level. Both of them burst out their strongest power and used their most powerful secret skills. The spear shadows and the sword lights kept hitting each other, making loud noises. The area within 10,000 meters was shaking. The high platform made of lapis lazuli was soon ravaged by the two of them. It was full of holes and looked like a scene of devastation. Such an intense battle naturally dazzled the eyes of the tens of thousands of citizens, who all cheered loudly for how wonderful it was. Everyone stared at the arena without blinking. Their hearts clenched tightly as they secretly worried for the two of them. Finally, 15 minutes passed. Yu Zhengfei and Qianshan Jinwu had made 200 moves. They had used up most of their vital energy. Finally, the winner was decided. There was no suspense in the result. Qianshan Jinwu, who was at the 7th level of Sky Origin stage, was indeed powerful. He defeated Yu Zhengfei. However, Yu Zhengfei was only at the 5th level of Sky Origin stage, but he lost to Qianshan Jinwu after over 100 moves. Qianshan Jinwu was also badly injured. He was covered in blood. It was unbelievable. Even though Yu Zhengfei lost, he was still honorable. He won the admiration of countless people and cultivators. Unfortunately, Yu Zhengfei's power was almost completely depleted, and his injuries were too severe. His dragon-patterned armor was stained with blood. He held his dragon spear with both hands. He stood on the ruined platform, bending over and gasping for breath. "Brother Qianshan, you are amazing. I admire you. I accept my defeat wholeheartedly," Yu Zhengfei said in a hoarse voice. Then he turned around and walked down the platform. He staggered out of the square. Qianshan Jinwu put away his golden sword and wiped the blood off his mouth. He turned around and looked at the imperial tutor. Tens of thousands of people were still talking about the exciting fight. They were excited. The emperor's preceptor walked onto the stage and announced loudly, "In the second round, Qianshan Jinwu wins and Yu Zhengfei loses. Third round, Ji Tianxing will fight Duanmu Yulong." After the announcement, Qianshan Jinwu bowed to the imperial tutor and left the platform. The imperial tutor used an array to repair the broken platform. Then, he announced the start of the third round. Duan Muyulong, who had been watching from below the platform, couldn't wait to get on the platform. The chance is finally here. As long as I kill Ji Tianxing on the platform, I can complete the Great Lord's order and become his right-hand man. Ji Tianxing, you will die today. Duan Muyulong sneered in his heart. A cold, killing intent flashed in his eyes. He held a silver sword in his left hand and pointed at Ji Tianxing with his right hand. He sneered and hooked his finger. This action was very arrogant and confident. Duan Muyulong seemed to have victory in his hands. He didn't put Ji Tianxing in his eyes at all. The tens of thousands of people and cultivators around the square were in an uproar. They were all talking about it. Duan Muyulong is so confident? Isn't he too arrogant? Maybe Duan Muyulong thinks that he is 3 or 4 levels higher than Ji Tianxing. So, he is sure that Ji Tianxing can't defeat him? But in the previous battle, Ji Tianxing defeated Di Jianqing, who was in the 5th level of Sky Origin stage, with just 2 moves. Duan Muyulong and Ji Tianxing are both princes of the Imperial Palace. Even if they are fighting on the platform, they should be learning from each other. Why do I feel like they have a grudge? Based on their performance in Giant Holy City, I hope that Ji Tianxing can win. Sigh, it's hard to say who will win. Although Duan Muyulong is arrogant, Ji Tianxing doesn't have much chance of winning. Amidst the discussions of countless people, Ji Tianxing calmly went up to the ring. Although Duan Muyulong was provoking him with his eyes and gestures, he wasn't angered at all. He was as calm as ever. After he stood still on the stage, Duan Muyulong sneered and said, Ji Tianxing, swords and sabers have no eyes on the stage. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold back and kill you with one strike. If you know what's good for you, quickly admit defeat and surrender. Ji Tianxing stared coldly at Duan Muyulong. He thought to himself, I have a close relationship with Yun Yao. It's normal for the Duanmu and Murong families to be hostile towards me. However, Murong Lingfeng tried to rope me in with ill intentions. Duan Muyulong didn't hide his hostility towards me. In the eyes of others, what he said was a deliberate provocation to provoke me. However, it's obvious that he wants to kill me. He wants to take advantage of this battle to kill me. Duan Muyulong hid his killing intent very well. However, Ji Tianxing had the Thunder Spirit Eyes. The Spirit Eyes seemed to have an even more magical effect. He could see through Duan Muyulong's disguise and feel the killing intent in his heart. Damn bastard! I have no enmity with you, yet you want to kill me. Ji Tianxing was secretly furious. His whole body was burning with anger and his aura was rising steadily. However, Duan Muyulong didn't know that Ji Tianxing had seen through his intentions. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was silent, he sneered contemptuously and said, Hee hee, it seems that you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. You're angry because of this? Since you don't know the difference between life and death, don't blame me for being ruthless. As his voice fell, Duan Muyulong could no longer hold back his killing intent. He waved his sword and attacked like lightning. Myriad Sword White Dragon Cry. Duan Muyulong burst out with majestic true essence and instantly slashed out 69 blazing white sword lights. Each sword light was 30 meters long and contained an extremely sharp power. It instantly enveloped a radius of 100 meters and trapped Ji Tianxing. The 69 sword lights flew back and forth like lightning and condensed into a sword array to suppress Ji Tianxing. Duan Muyulong pointed with his finger and 9 white sword lights flew out from the sword array. They converged into a 50-meter-long white dragon and pounced on Ji Tianxing from the sky. Roar! The white dragon condensed from the sword lights was vivid and lifelike. It let out an earth-shaking dragon roar. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying white dragon was right in front of Ji Tianxing, about to swallow him whole. Chapter 604. When the sword array of the white dragon roar of 10,000 swords was formed and the holy white dragon pounced on Ji Tianxing, countless people were frightened and worried. The tens of thousands of people in the square all let out anxious cries of surprise, sweating for Ji Tianxing. At this critical juncture, Ji Tianxing could not avoid the holy white dragon's attack, so he did not hesitate to use the secret technique of Tianxing's 5 extremes. Earth Emperor Shield. He shouted in a low voice and circulated his true essence, frantically extracting the earth's spiritual qi between heaven and earth. Suddenly, the earth's spiritual qi within a 10-mile radius was gathered around him, condensing into an oval-shaped dark yellow light shield. Bam! Almost at the moment when the Earth Emperor shield was formed, the holy white dragon hit him hard. In the deafening loud noise, Ji Tianxing was sent flying 100 meters away, retreating to the edge of the ring. However, he was unscathed, and the Earth Emperor shield protecting him did not collapse. Only a dozen cracks appeared. Seeing this scene, the people in the square were relieved. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were relieved. Duan Muyulong's face froze, frowned, and his expression became gloomy. Damn bastard, how dare he block my white dragon roar? This sword array secret technique was one of his secret techniques. He had not used it in Giant Holy City before, saving it to kill Ji Tianxing. However, he did not expect Ji Tianxing to be so powerful that he could block the sword array's attack. However, when Duanmu Yulong saw the cracks on the Earth Emperor shield, he sneered and said, "You can block it once, but I'd like to see if you can block the second and third attack." As he said that, Duanmu Yulong controlled the sword array again, releasing 12 sword lights, which condensed into a holy white dragon. This holy white dragon was stronger than the previous one, and its speed was faster. However, before the holy white dragon could attack, Ji Tianxing used his secret technique to counterattack. Burning Sky Palm. He raised his magma-like left arm and fiercely slapped it towards Duanmu Yulong. Suddenly, the endless scarlet flame true fire condensed into a giant flame palm. It instantly passed through the sword formation's blockade and slapped towards Duanmu Yulong. At that moment, the gigantic flaming palm that blotted out the sky was as dazzling as the sun, illuminating the entire square. The high platform with a radius of 200 meters was also filled with the red flame true fire, turning into a boundless sea of fire. Duanmu Yulong did not expect that Ji Tianxing would not block Bai Longyin's bombardment and would even use his finishing move to launch a counterattack. When the heaven-burning giant palm struck, his pupils constricted, and his face was filled with shock. "Thousand Souls Cauldron!" He shouted in a low voice, and a dim light flashed in his palm. Immediately, a simple and unadorned bronze cauldron appeared. This ancient cauldron was his most prized treasure. It was used to refine elixirs. It was a heavenly origin great treasure. Of course, other than refining pills, the ancient cauldron was also a magic treasure with both offensive and defensive capabilities. Swish! After the ancient cauldron was injected with true essence, it instantly turned into a 5-meter-tall bronze cauldron, protecting Duanmu Yulong. Almost at the same time, the burning sky palm that could destroy heaven and earth fell from the sky and slammed into Duanmu Yulong. Boom! A loud noise that shook the 9 heavens suddenly exploded on the high platform, shaking the ground within a radius of dozens of miles. The entire square violently shook, and the ground was shaken into dense gullies. Many martial artists and commoners were shaken to the ground. The arena with a radius of 200 meters had turned into a world of scarlet flames, and nothing could be seen clearly. The martial artists and commoners in the square could not see the situation in the arena, and they did not know the result. Everyone could only feel the destructive scarlet flame true fire through the defensive array, and how violent and terrifying its might was. After a long time, the scarlet flame true fire that filled the entire arena gradually dissipated. Tens of thousands of commoners and martial artists were finally able to see the situation in the arena. They saw that the indestructible arena had been smashed into pieces by the burning sky palm, turning into rubble and ruins. Ji Tianxing held the black dragon sword, proudly standing in the sky, unharmed. His white robe was spotless, and his golden wings were resplendent. His entire body exuded a domineering aura that looked down on the world, as if Kenshin was alive. And in the pile of rubble beneath his feet, there were dozens of charred copper cauldron fragments scattered. Duanmu Yulong's Thousand Souls cauldron was clearly shattered by the burning sky palm. At this time, there was a muffled bang as Duanmu Yulong drilled out of the rubble, sending countless rubble flying. He flapped his multicolored wings and flew into the sky, standing 200 meters away from Ji Tianxing. His eyes stared at Ji Tianxing, revealing a thick killing intent. There was no other way. Duanwu Yulong's appearance was too miserable, too embarrassing. His clothes had long been burned to ashes, leaving only a set of soft armor on his body. Moreover, it was full of cracks and charred black like charcoal. He was like a burnt sweet potato, his hair curled into a ball, his face was pitch black, and black smoke came out of his mouth. The commoners in the square were stunned when they saw Duanwu Yulong's appearance. Then they burst into laughter and discussions. Of course, not only was Duanwu Yulong's appearance in a sorry state, his body was also seriously injured. Previously, he had been struck by lightning by Zhu Lingxin, so his injuries had not healed. Now, he had suffered another burning sky palm, making his injuries even worse. Of course, his fighting strength had sharply decreased, leaving him with only 40% of his original strength. His angry face distorted as he roared with grief and indignation. Ji Tianxing, you bastard, I'll kill you. Duanwu Yulong was so angry that he almost went berserk, almost losing his reason. He no longer concealed the killing intent in his heart. As he roared, he held his sword with both hands. His entire body ignited with anger and blood-red killing intent. His eyes were red as he charged at Ji Tianxing. Blood transformation divine art. Duanwu Yulong resolutely used the secret technique of the Duanwu family. He burned his own blood essence and sacrificed 8 years of bitter cultivation in order to increase his fighting strength by 3 times for 10 breaths of time. At this moment, his fighting strength was several times stronger than Qianshan Jinwu. In order to kill Ji Tianxing on the spot, he was willing to pay any price. World-destroying sword. With a furious roar, Duanwu Yulong held his sword with both hands and slashed out a 100-meter-long blood-red sword that could split the heavens and earth. This sword was enough to destroy everything within a 100-mile radius. It could split a city in half and turn it into ruins. When the blood-red sword fell from the sky, the air within a 10-mile radius seemed to have frozen. Tens of thousands of commoners stared in horror, their hearts in their throats. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, was fearless as he shouted coldly. He coldly shouted, Duanwu Yulong, since you're seeking death, I'll grant you death. As he spoke, he activated the sword embryo in his body, transforming it into a 30-meter-long golden sword. It flapped its golden wings and ruthlessly blasted at the berserk Duanwu Yulong. Sword of Judgment. Chapter 605. The Sword of Judgment with its golden wings didn't look as intimidating as the Sword of Bloody Light. But in fact, the two were almost the same. When the Sword of Judgment slashed through the sky and hit Duanwu Yulong, the Sword of Bloody Light also fell from the sky and hit Ji Tianxing hard. The two sword lights were terrifyingly powerful and could destroy the world. But the difference was that Duanwu Yulong didn't have any treasure to defend himself while Ji Tianxing closed his golden wings when the Sword of Bloody Light was about to hit him. Boom! Boom! The two of them were hit by the sword lights at the same time. Two loud noises that shook the sky sounded at the same time. At that moment, the world shook and the clouds changed color. The ground within a radius of tens of miles began to tremble as countless gullies appeared in the ground. Luckily, the imperial tutor saw that the situation wasn't good. He waved his hand and created a huge light shield to cover the entire square. That blocked the power from the arena and protected the tens of thousands of people in the square from being killed on the spot. After a long time, the loud noises that reverberated in the sky gradually disappeared. The 200 meters wide defensive array, the bloody light and the golden flame that filled the sky gradually disappeared. When everything returned to normal, everyone looked at the defensive array. Seeing the situation in the array, everyone was shocked. Countless people opened their mouths in astonishment. The square was deathly silent. Everyone had forgotten to shout and cheer. They saw that the arena had completely disappeared from the defensive array. Even the debris on the ground was gone. There was only a huge deep hole left in the array and dust flying in the air. Ji Tianxing and Duanwu Yulong were gone. There was no sound coming from the deep hole. The tens of thousands of people in the square came back to their senses and immediately burst into loud discussions and exclamations. Oh my God! Ji Tianxing and Duanmu Yulong's strength is actually so strong. This is unbelievable. If it weren't for the protection of the defensive array, I'm afraid everything within 100 miles would be in ruins. They are indeed the crown prince of the imperial residence. One of them is at Sky Origin Stage 3 and the other is at Sky Origin Stage 6. Yet they can unleash the power of Sky Origin Stage 7. It's over. Ji Tianxing and Duanmu Yulong both disappeared. Could it be that the two of them perished together and turned into dust? In the crowd, Yun Yao, Jiku, and Yen looked at the deep pit in the great formation with pale faces. Their eyes were filled with deep sorrow. The three of them felt their hearts clench as the same thought flashed through their minds. Tianxing is definitely not dead, he must still be alive. Big brother Tianxing will never die, never. Senior brother Tianxing, you will always be the best. I don't believe that you will be killed. The three of them stared at the deep pit and silently prayed for Ji Tianxing, hoping that he would appear as soon as possible. Even the imperial tutor and Long Yunxiao frowned. They could not help but fly to the top of the crater to investigate the situation. At this moment, a dazzling golden light suddenly flew out from the deep pit. Swoosh! A handsome and valiant figure was wrapped in the golden light. He flew to the top of the deep pit and stood proudly in the air. When the crowd saw the figure clearly, they immediately exclaimed in disbelief. Ji Tianxing! It's Ji Tianxing! Oh my God! He's still alive! He's not dead! I simply can't believe my eyes. He took Duanmu Yulong's strongest killing move and actually survived. A genius? He's a monster. A once-in-a-century genius. This is so exciting. The Emperor's son of the imperial family is indeed powerful. This is a battle between the most powerful geniuses. This battle will definitely spread throughout Zhongzhou and the 9 regions of the south. Tens of thousands of people were in an uproar. They were shouting excitedly and discussing excitedly. Ji Tianxing, who was standing in the air, was still in his white robe. He stood tall and straight, and his expression was the same as usual. However, he was not unscathed. Upon closer inspection, one could see that his face was as pale as paper. There was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that Duanmu Yulong's most powerful attack in his berserk state had injured him. However, his injuries were not serious and were not life-threatening. Ji Tianxing looked around and saw that the imperial tutor, Long Yunxiao, and countless martial artists were staring at the deep pit as if waiting for Duanmu Yulong to appear. Therefore, he said in a low voice, "Everyone, there's no need to wait. Duanmu Yulong has turned into dust. His soul has returned to heaven and earth." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Their eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Long Yunxiao's expression changed. He asked in a hoarse voice, You killed Duanmu Yulong?" His face was a little gloomy, and a look of deep worry flashed in his eyes. Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "Today was supposed to be a spar, but Duanmu Yulong wanted to kill me. He wanted to take my life, so how could I just sit there and wait for death? He only has himself to blame for dying under my sword. He can't blame anyone else." Just as he said, swords have no eyes on the stage. Since he didn't surrender, he was prepared to die. Ji Tianxing's words were reasonable. The tens of thousands of citizens nodded their heads in agreement. After all, this was a principle that applied to all corners of the world. Duanmu Yulong wanted to kill Ji Tianxing, but he was not strong enough. Instead, he was killed by Ji Tianxing. He deserved to die, and no one would sympathize with him. Long Yunxiao did not sympathize with Duanmu Yulong. In fact, he was happy to see Duanmu Yulong killed. However, what he was truly worried about was that Ji Tianxing had formed a blood feud with the Duanmu family. How would he survive in the central state in the future? If he offended the Duanmu family, not only would he not be able to survive in the central state, he would not even have a place in the entire Tianxian continent. However, at this point, it was useless for him to say anything. He could only sigh in his heart. Sigh. The imperial tutor flew to the sky above the array with a solemn face. He announced loudly, "Ji Tianxing wins the 3rd round. Now, Only Ji Tianxing and Qian Shanzhenwu have advanced to the next round. Both of you, please recuperate and restore your strength as soon as possible. In 6 hours, the two of you will have the final battle to determine the winner. The imperial tutor spoke in a businesslike manner. He was sacred, majestic, and very fair. After announcing the result, he used the power of the array to repair the deep hole in the defensive array and rebuild the stage. Ji Tianxing also left the array silently and flew back to Yun Yao and the rest. Yao Yao, Yen, protect me. I need to recuperate and restore my true core strength as soon as possible. He instructed in a low voice. Then he immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and started to recuperate his internal injuries. In the previous battle, he had suffered serious injuries. He had used his trump card twice and used 60% of his power. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.